Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 231 Extra or PEEP 231. This is the extra for PEP 231 or Planet Extra podcast, if you will. PEEP. I think I've explained that enough. This is because we had so much left over after PEP 2231, and not just because we finished 5 minutes early. We thought we'd squeeze in a bonus ep for you all. I am Chaz Lucidello, a host of Planet America on ABC Australia. This is an official podcast of the ABC. Say hi to the Ombudsman for me. You know to do that. That's for sure. I can tell. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel. You can find highlights there as well. We're on Facebook at the Chaz from Planet America channel. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs. And if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we're likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's our Pep Chaz Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow Peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lucky privately, why not email us? That address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And a big thank you to the podiatrist who emailed us this week. I haven't replied to you yet, podiatrist, because I'm a bit slow on the replies. The other emailers can tell you that, but I will, and I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, Mr. Podiatrist. And do not forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. And we're recording this at 3 o'clock p.m. on Wednesday Arvo or 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning East Coast time. But for now, let's turn to the man who will never raise the stakes on inconsequential views. I speak, of course, about someone who doesn't drink Dr. Pepper. So I can't call him Dr. Pepper, but I can call him everyone's favourite guest, Jared Mondschein. Hey, Jared.
Wow, that is such an amazing intro. I am so honored to be called everyone's favorite guest.
You really are. You should see the comments. You wait.
Oh, no way. Well, thank you so much. And I guess similar to Dr. Dave, I should clarify that I only speak for myself and my grumpy self and no one else whatsoever.
For those who don't love you like the commenters do every time you're on, and don't know who you are, can you just remind people who you are?
A grumpy man from America. No, I'm the director of research at the U.S. Study Center based at the University of Sydney. And I work in the Institute building for the it used to be called the Institute building for the Deaf, Dumb, and Blind. And I can only confirm that as long as I work there, there are no blind or deaf people.
And how many doors down are you from Dr. Dave?
I am just across the hall, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, a kitchen between us.
Oh, that's so romantic. What are you grateful for?
Oh, man. I'm so glad you remember to do gratefuls because obviously as someone who loves Thanksgiving as much as I do, it means a lot. I'm grateful for so many things, and we could do a whole pep on this. But I think the number one thing that I'm most grateful for is when Melina was talking about loving her family and being surprised about loving her family. I couldn't agree more. I was raised to hear, not by my own family, but by others, that family was tough. And it's not, man. You can have a lot of fun. And kids are hilarious if you let them be and you enjoy it. So many people just think kids are not fun, and they totally are. With that said, it's not fun as a parent. My least favorite thing as a parent.
What's that?
Meeting other parents who did not want to be parents. So, yeah, that's not fun at all. But I do love being a parent. When you know what I'm talking about?
Did they tell you that? Are they openly saying, I hate my kids and I hate my life?
Sometimes in a bit more subtly than that. And then sometimes you can see their life decisions. Sure. And you're like, oh, man, that kid didn't choose to be born. Why are you subjecting them to this nonsense? But, so that's what I'm grateful for. I'm so glad that she flagged that because it really is so much fun having kids.
I agree. I do enjoy my kids as well.
I didn't say I enjoy my kids. Was that the
no, you're one of those adults, yeah. I'm great. As always, I find it impossible to be grateful for only one thing. They're going to be short. Number one, I'm grateful to Neil for the delightful soft drink that he purchased for us. You spoil us, Neil. I'm not going to say what brand of soft drink it is, but he knows I like them. And they are powering this extra. So we are helping each other, Neil. Thank you very much. Secondly, I'm grateful for the Peppers in general. Last week I made a mention in passing about how the subscriptions had kind of dropped off recently, and you guys responded with a very big spike in the subs. I do appreciate that. While I'm at it, I also appreciate the people who watch Planet America, either on YouTube or Facebook or iView, especially iView because the ABC are obsessed with those numbers. I didn't tell you that. but they are. we had a meeting just yesterday. I'm just sort of talking out of school here, where they basically allowed us to do whatever we want for 2026 and 2027 off the back of our iView numbers. So keep on watching on iView.
Does that mean we can do 6-hour peps?
Maybe not that much. But I love that you're still pushing for that though, Jared.
All for it.
So anyway, so by you guys watching Planet America so much, it allows me the license to just worry about reading news and preparing scripts without having to worry about the real world. I'm grateful for that. I'm basically the closest thing that exists in modern day to a professional thinker. I can just take in information constantly without having to worry about day-to-day reality like the Greeks used to. I can do that thanks to you guys. So I do appreciate that.
That was amazing. I didn't even know that we had multiple gratefuls possible. Can I add one more?
Yeah, go.
The Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I think there's some questions about the ambassador when he was first appointed, the Australian ambassador to Washington, D.C., Kevin Rudd. But I do have to say, having worked with them and especially having navigated some sometimes logistical challenges, I'll just use that euphemism in some of my work endeavors, they are lovely and they are very effective, both in Congress and White House and everywhere else. And I think maybe it's the earnest American in me rebelling against the tall poppy syndrome, but I really do think that they are good at their jobs and aren't appreciated enough.
Fair enough. I think you can get away with that, even in Australia, 'cause I'm not sure too many people would refer to diplomat types as tall poppies. but yeah, maybe in your world.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. Actually, I got one more. I'm grateful to ABC America for putting Kimmel back on air, but not because of the reason you think. It's not because I like watching Jimmy Kimmel at all, but it's because I feel sorry for the ABC Australia bureaucrats who have to respond to all the complaint letters they've been getting from idiot Americans for the last week. And they've probably been being buried in complaints, ABC Australia, and they have to respond. They have to respond. That is, in the ABC, when you get a proper formal complaint, you need to respond. That's the rule, right? And so some poor schlep has to reply to every American who's going, I'm going to boycott you and all this kind of stuff. It's just, and so anyway, I'm grateful for ABC America for finishing that torture of ABC Australian bureaucrats.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Now you've given me so many ideas now that I know they have to respond.
They know how to torture a bureaucrat. Yeah, that's how you do it. Okay, since it's an extra, I'm going to avoid stories from the last few days, like the RFK autism story, for instance. I'm not going to touch that. I'll do that with Dave. But I do want to update you guys on a whole bunch of stuff we didn't get to last week and during the weekend. And Jared's going to help me with that. And while we're talking RFK, he had news last week as well. So I am aware that there is new RFK news. Save that for Friday. Let's do the old news to begin with, which is the dreaded AEST meeting, the Advisory Committee on Vaccine Practices meeting. That's the vaccine panel, which had 17 people, 17 experts until recently. Then RFK just sacked them all and replaced them with his buddies. They're not all hacks. Like there are a few there who are just normal scientists, but there are some interesting types there as well. It's kind of the Star Wars cantina, if you know what I mean. And people have been dreading their meetings about what they were going to do to the vaccine protocol. In fact, the CDC head got fired, at least in part, according to her, because she refused to guarantee she would accept the panel's recommendations sight unseen.
I thought it was because she said she was not trustworthy.
Well, that's of course the truth. But when she's lying, she says it's because she wouldn't accept the panel's recommendations sight unseen. That's what she says. So this was a controversial meeting, what they were going to come up with. And in fact, some blue states in advance even established what they call the Northeast Public Health Collaborative, because they had so little faith in the new board, the AEST board, that this is New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. They said, well, we're going to come up with some guidelines in advance, so you don't have to listen to those dudes. And going into their 2-day meeting where they were considering the recommendations for many vaccines, there was real concern they could do a huge amount of damage to the vaccine regimen. So what happened? Update time. In summary, they voted to not recommend the combined measles, mumps, rubella and chickenpox vaccine for any patient under 4 years old. They voted to not change the hepatitis B vaccine recommendations for newborns. People were expecting them to change that, but they voted to keep them as they were. And they voted to adopt a teensy bit more restrictive recommendation for COVID-19 shots. Not much more restrictive, but teensy bit. Let me go into details of all three of those. MMRV vaccine. V stands for varicella or chickenpox. That's not, before you guys panic when you hear that, that's not the MMR vaccine. That's the MMR plus chickenpox vaccine, a combined vaccine. It's only given to 10 to 15% of children at the moment nationwide. And the reason why, well, one of the reasons why is because there is a slightly elevated risk of giving children febrile seizures, slightly. And the panel recommended not have the vaccine. They recommended that it's not a combined shot for all four. You separate them. You have the MMR vaccine and you have the chickenpox vaccine separately. That's it. They were saying have two shots rather than one. To be honest, even before now, the CDC recommended that children receive their first dose of chickenpox vaccine separate from the MMR vaccine. But you had the option of the combined vaccine. They're saying, we don't even give you the option. That's what they're saying.
Can I just say, I didn't know anything about any of this before I had kids.
Yeah.
It's only parents that know this stuff very well, I find, because we all had to do it. And not only did we all have to do it, we all had to do it before our kids did anything interesting, like go to school.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is before they're 4. Yeah. Absolutely. Is this going to be the beginnings of another Grateful for you here?
No.
No, okay.
But we can try to one-up each other on Grateful. I'm happy to any day.
So they've basically removed the option of the combined 4-part MMRV shot for children under 4 years old. They have, however, voted to preserve MMRV's status in the Vaccines for Children's program, which would basically free vaccines for the people who can't afford them. That's for, obviously, people over 4 because they're banning it for people under 4, or not recommending it for people under 4. We should say mainstream medical groups, they don't agree with this recommendation. They say there isn't enough evidence to justify the change. They say febrile seizures already exist in 3 to 5% of kids anyway, and they're not associated with any proven impairment. So they said they suck, but they're not something to necessarily avoid. I might add on a personal note, I probably shouldn't add this, but I will. I had extremely frequent febrile convulsions as a kid, extremely frequent. Over 40 times I had sessions of febrile convulsions. It's kind of a family mythology from my mum that each time I got convulsions, I got smarter. She insists that I read more after each convulsion and showcased greater learning skills after every convulsion. She insists on that.
What ages did they occur?
This is when I was like 1, 2. Yeah, very young. Like
you were reading?
I learned to read by 2. I was a very early reader, and Mum attributes it partly to the convulsions.
Wow.
So like she insists I got smarter from the convulsions. That sounds to me like an extremely dubious claim that makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm certainly not stipulating to that in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, my mum I think has real Maha Queen potential, but leaving that aside.
Sounds like you're recommending febrile seizures for
children. That's what I'm saying. Do not trust my mum's recommendation on this. And by the way, my mum said my sister also had convulsions. She said that did not work for my sister at all, but it worked for me. So anyway, my point is I really shouldn't have brought this up. but my point is that I got through them at the very least. These are the waters we're swimming in. When we're talking Maha, we're swimming in these kinds of waters. My mum reckons those kinds of waters. So I just threw it in. Bottom line, I don't think his recommendation is something that medical professionals are very worried about. They disagree with it without being concerned.
Yeah.
The hepatitis B vaccine recommendation. Now, some panelists were quite keen to change those recommendations. By the way, did you have anything to say about the MMV before?
No.
No, okay. Some panelists were quite keen to change these recommendations. There have been noises made about shifting the timing for the first dose of hepatitis B vaccine from birth to at least 1 month old, because at the moment it's at birth, unless the mother tests positive for the virus during the pregnancy. That's the only exception. These people who advocated to push it back, noted that some other high-income countries do not recommend the hepatitis B vaccine straight away.
Yeah.
Those countries, though, have a better healthcare system than America.
Shocked.
Yes. Like they're wealthy countries that actually screen every mother for hepatitis B before they give birth, unlike in America, where about 15% of mums miss out on being screened, for instance.
Is there a developed country with a worse healthcare system than America?
I don't know. Probably not.
So.
Probably not.
It depends how you define it.
Yeah.
Depends how you define it, right?
Sure.
America.
Well, how you define a developed country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in terms of healthcare as well, in terms of access in America, you have more. But in terms of broad society, I think if you look at the especially the lower end of the society.
I was going to say the tippy top. They got some great healthcare coverage.
Yeah. Senators, members of Congress, fantastic healthcare.
Yes. Notably, the panel did recommend all pregnant women be tested for hepatitis B. Doesn't mean they will be, but they're recommended to. There was apparently a lot of confusion on this vaccine issue, though, and they decided to remain cautious, table any proposed changes for now. Fair enough. Probably helps it's a voluntary vaccination. If mums don't want to give their newborn a Hep B vaccination, they don't have to. And then the COVID update, they recommended people speak with their doctor about getting a COVID-19 shot. They didn't recommend the vaccine. They didn't recommend not getting the vaccine. They just had no recommendation at all other than speak to your doctor. They didn't recommend that you even need a prescription for the vaccine, which is important. That makes it a little easier to get. Look, that this is a slightly more skeptical position than existed before. But actually, ACIP's recommendation is much more pro-vaccine than the one the FDA released last month.
That's right.
Yeah, last month, you might recall, we talked about this. They said they wanted to limit the vaccine to people over 65 or people who had underlying conditions. And ACIP is saying, no, anyone can get the vaccine. It's just not recommended or not recommended. Talk to your doctor, essentially. This position also preserves insurance coverage of COVID shots as well, which is important.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's massive. Exactly. Yeah. Depending on the state, could potentially interfere with getting the vaccination in a pharmacy because they have different technical wordings each state. Different experts are saying different things here. I don't know about that. It's a bit ambiguous. We should say that these are different recommendations from those from the Northeast Public Health Collaborative that I spoke about before. They recommend that infants and toddlers between the ages of 6 months and 23 months, as well as adults over 19, should be vaccinated. That's their recommendation. Healthy children between the ages of 2 and 18 do not need to be vaccinated, but may receive the vaccine, according to the group. So that's the COVID part. Do you have any comment on that?
No, I feel like in the same way that we have this whole concept of economic security now, we don't just have economics, we don't just have national security, we have economic security. And so we're getting more horizontal in our challenges and we can't just think in a siloed way. I think the same thing applies to this, where we can no longer think of only health. Yeah. We're factoring in like politics and public opinion in a way that I don't think we've seen for some time. I don't think it's completely foreign. In many ways, the whole concept of economic security is reverting to how things used to be done. And basically the 80s and 90s were a weird time and early 2000s were a weird time. And I imagine it's similar with public health, but it really is interesting how it is just the politics and the public health now are just so supercharged together and you can't divorce them anymore.
A lot of the critiques of this, because there have been critiques of these. I mean, look, the bottom line is they actually didn't make much of a difference. No. For all the fear mongering, in the end, it didn't at the end of the day, it wasn't a big deal. This meeting. I mean, I should say these recommendations also need to be agreed upon by the CDC director to be implemented. Who maybe sight unseen will agree to them. But yeah, let's give credit where it's due. Their new panel, the RFK's new panel, didn't bugger everything up. No. That credit is due. But on that note, people, what you were just saying, the critiques that have come in, and there have been many, have been on those grounds, saying, okay, they didn't bugger everything up. But what they did do is open up the examination of vaccines to scrutiny in a way that it didn't used to be. Like where they used to only consider, ACIP used to only consider the vaccine, whether the vaccine should be maintained or not, when something changed, when there was new information or a new study or new something. In this case, they were just second-guessing decisions that were being made. And if you open that door, you can just keep on second-guessing. That's the critique. Now, I would argue, I know RFK would definitely argue, that people were second-guessing them anyway.
Yep.
And I think people who thought they weren't being second-guessed were living in delusion land. They were being second-guessed. Unfortunately, whoever's fault it is, that genie bottle has been opened, and you just can't bottle it up again. So we just got to deal with it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
On that note, Catherine Wu and Tom Bartlett wrote a piece in The Atlantic, which I thought was a bit unfair, to be honest. I'm going to read you a big quote from it because I found this interesting. This is what they wrote. These early shifts, less COVID vaccination, fewer options for flu, MMR and chickenpox vaccines may seem benign enough, but that may be part of the point. Cannery and his allies are testing the waters, but they're also accustoming the public both to the idea of fewer vaccines and to the routine of doubting vetted immunisations. The more logical their earlier choices seem, the more reasonably Americans might assume the ones that follow are too. By the time people realise we're in a bad way, we're going to be so far in a bad way we won't be able to get back out, Margot Savoy, a senior vice president at the Australian Academy of Family Physicians, told us. Whether vaccine infrastructure disappears by erosion or rapid demolition, the end result will be the same, a nation far less protected than it once was and could still be. So look, these people are doctors and I'm not, but they're arguing that RFK's board is being sneaky by not doing anything too bad at first so they can lull everyone into a false sense of security. That sounds incredibly unfair to me.
Yeah. What could they have done differently?
Well, what do you want?
At the same time, you can also see that argument now where, with, again, politics running everything. I can see their argument, but I don't see how they could have done any of this differently. Yeah.
I understand RFK's elevated some interesting individuals, but I think at the end of the day, they should be judged by their results, meeting by meeting. You don't stop watching them. You don't take it for granted. You don't go, well, the first one was okay, so let's just back off and ignore them now.
Yeah.
Obviously, every meeting you want to see the results.
Yeah.
But at least so far, they haven't done damage. So let's just keep on staying vigilant.
I mean, the same thing in terms of like expanding beyond the siloed thinking is I think everyone applies now to the whole concept of not just vaccines, but just the response to COVID and shutting down, and that we only sought public health, but we didn't seek out maybe education experts or psychology experts, right? I think it's a really tough balance to strike in terms of not second-guessing everything ever and trying to do the right thing.
And this is a very quick update on TikTok. In the last PEP, we spoke about the impending TikTok deal and how it wasn't clear who was going to retain control over the algorithm. A senior White House official has confirmed, this is new information, that ByteDance will create a separate American copy of its algorithm to lease to the new group. You go, lease, what does that mean? Who's controlling it? Well, according to this person, the group will control US user data and be able to shape the algorithm as they see fit. A White House official said, whatever that is, the algorithm will be retrained from the ground up and protected by Oracle to ensure Americans' data is safeguarded and foreign influence is removed. Okay, if that's true, that it's being controlled by Americans, then I think that does take care of the biggest concern of this deal. If that's true.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of devils in the details on this. But it's still, as someone that has done research on foreign investment, I find it very frustrating that we just think someone's citizenship is the way to safeguard any security issues. So because he has a U.S. passport, if I give him $50,000, he's not going to give me all the data. This is so farcical to me that we're so obsessed with the citizenship of the owner of this data. What they're calling data the new oil. It's so limited, and they think that just once something is past the border, the international border, then we're safe. But that's ridiculous.
That is a excellent point. The only thing I disagree with you on is if you give someone $50,000 for something shady, it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong. Ask Tom Homan. He'll tell you all about that. But
that's why I chose that figure.
We'll talk about that on Friday.
Has to be in a recyclable bag, though.
Yes. Like I said, most of this PEEP is going to be about stuff that happened last week and in the weekend. But there is one thing from this week that I know you're hot to trot on. So I want to just get that out of the way nice and early because I have no idea about this because it involves Australians. why don't you tell us about whatever the hell is going on with Australia that you want to talk about?
Right. So we know that Prime Minister Albanese went to New York with the foreign minister to attend the UN General Assembly, where, along with Canada, the UK, and France, they were to support the creation of a state called Palestine. While he was in New York, there was a lot of questions about whether Prime Minister Albanese, who has not had a meeting with President Trump yet, would meet with President Trump. And just for background, they've had 4 phone calls. Kevin Rudd has met with, I think this is all public knowledge, has met with a number of senior officials and cabinet members in the Trump administration. And also, for background on this, we shouldn't forget that during the first Trump administration, Australia got a formal state dinner under the Morrison government. And it was a huge deal and just all sorts of loud, very Trumpian, extravagant celebration. And then once the Biden administration took over, then Prime Minister Albanese actually got another state dinner. So that's 2 administrations in a row that have gotten a state dinner. And I've always said that that is not because Australia is somehow more interesting or that, American presidents like kangaroos or something. It's like, actually, no, Australia has never been more important to America, in my view, in the history of the U.S.-Australia alliance, which is over 70 years old. And I think that there are a lot of there's a lot of questions about whether Prime Minister Albanese should even meet with Donald Trump. And I think there's a few schools of thought, but I'll just highlight 2 in particular. There's one school of thought that looks at the fact that Australia has a lower tariff rate than any other country, or the lowest possible tariff rate of 10%, right? And then Australia also has run for decades a trade deficit with the United States, which goes into its favor. Australia has a free trade agreement. Australia has, 70 plus years of an alliance. Australia has fought alongside American troops in every major war for over a century.
Australia also has, don't forget, control over Heard Island, which is a major trading nation with America.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The alliance, you could say, is largely in good shape. And at the same time, Donald Trump is not very popular in Australia, and our own polling has found that that in terms of the percentage of Australians who think that a second Trump term has been good for Australia, it's 16%.
That's not very good.
So you think of all those reasons, and you're like, why even meet with this guy, right? The alliance is in a good place. He's not very popular.
Yeah.
Why? Like, just make so that one school of thought is make Australia a small target, right? We've seen what's happened in other Oval Office visits, South Africa, or obviously Ukraine. Why even bother, right? Like Australia got the 10% tariff rate. Let's just get out of here and escape his wrath. That's one school of thought. There's another school of thought that disagrees with that. And I'm in the latter camp because I think Australia really does matter more to the U.S. than ever. But Australia is not just like more important, but it's also more impactful and more influential in the United States than ever, specifically in D.C. and the whole history of 74 years of the U.S.-Australia alliance. And there's a few different reasons for that. Firstly, the top reason for that is, in my view, the strategic circumstances have changed. And that means you probably, again, this is an Australian thing. I apologize for getting very wonky and think tanky on you. But in 2023, there was something called the Defense Strategic Review, where they just reviewed Australia's defense capabilities and decide what's our strategy, what should we do. And this was when the new Albanese government took over. And the co-lead of that, Sir Angus Houston, called Australia's strategic circumstances at that time in 2023 the worst I have ever seen. And this guy has been around for decades. He's a very elder statesman in Australia. But then you think about that, some few years later, what have we seen since 2023? We've seen China circumnavigating Australia. around the same time, it was also running all sorts of interesting operations around Taiwan and Guam. You've seen increasingly brazen incursions into Taiwan's airspace. You've seen continued coordination and defense coordination between China and Russia, who now have a no limits partnership. You've seen more gray zone coercion. Please.
I was going to say China messing with the Philippines as well. Yeah.
This list is long, right? This is just in the last couple of years, right? So that's the first reason. The circumstances have changed. Second reason is that I don't think Australia can navigate these different circumstances alone. And the way to deal with these circumstances, in my view, is to work with allies and partners. And that is the number one way we've seen time and time again that China has shifted its approach to something is through allies and partners working together. The most obvious case of this is when China joined the World Trade Organization. It actually changed China's economy. It actually opened it up to the world. Now, did it change as much as many wanted it to? No, but still changed a lot. And I think we have to keep in mind that Australia is a middle power country, and it is powerful, but it is not. It can't do this alone. It has to work with others, including the United States. And lastly, and this is perhaps most relevant to the PEP world, is that this administration, more so than any other administration in my lifetime, is unique in that it adheres more closely to the president's, let's say, leadership than any other administration. And so establishing that personal relationship between the prime minister and the president is important, because as soon as you have that green light, the rest of the administration is able to run with it. I can tell you, as a think tanker that works with folks in the U.S. government, there is some trepidation about being too far ahead of the president. As soon as you have that bilat between Albanese and Trump, I think you get a lot more. So for those reasons, I think Australia, or I should say the Australian Prime Minister, should definitely meet with President Trump and not be just a small target. And when he does meet with President Trump, I think he should not just talk about tariffs. That's just a waste of Australian political capital. We know he doesn't care about, Donald Trump does not care about very much beyond tariffs. That's his favorite policy tool, that he will continue to push that button as much as he can. No, instead it should talk about the region. It should talk about what's going on and how to navigate it together. It should talk about critical minerals. It should talk about maybe economic coercion. Talk about the Quad. Right now, the U.S. and India, the tension that the U.S. has with India is the worst tension that the U.S. has had with India in decades. It has been a bipartisan consensus for India to continue to strategically align itself, or increasingly strategically align itself with the U.S. The reason that the U.S. has a free and open Indo-Pacific strategy is to highlight how important India is, right? And right now there's tension. Who can deal with that right now when the Japanese government is, like, the prime minister is probably not going to continue to be the prime minister? Australia can. Australia can bring the Quad back. Again, this is the way to navigate these terrible strategic circumstances. Australia can't do this alone. Australia needs the U.S. to work on this with them. And yeah, I think Donald Trump is unpopular in the United States. But do you know what else is unpopular? Donald Trump is unpopular in Australia. But do you know what else is unpopular in Australia? Abandoning the U.S. alliance altogether. Yeah. When we polled this question, we said, if Donald Trump, 2 years ago, we said, if Donald Trump wins re-election, should Australia abandon the U.S. alliance? 37% of Australians said yes. We just polled this, and I'm giving you exclusive data now, and that's gone down to 17%.
It's gone down.
17% of Australians want to abandon the U.S. alliance.
So it was 37% under Biden.
At the hypothetical, yeah.
And it's 17% now in the middle of the Trump administration.
And I think that goes, to me,
surprising.
It is, right? Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I already shared how bad the data is on Donald Trump himself for Australians. But to me, that shows me that Australians can walk and chew gum at the same time. They can see that, we don't like this guy, but the prime minister meeting with an unpopular Donald Trump, that's not going to somehow tarnish him in Australia. He's doing what Australia needs to be done. There's no alternative, right? Like, if you think about all the ways that what the U.S. alliance enables Australia to do, who's the alternative? It's not China. It's not Indonesia, right? And so I think it's really more important than ever for the prime minister and the president to meet, and for the prime minister to not focus on the bilateral, not focus on tariffs, not focus on small ball stuff, but think big and yes, it's risky. Yes, he very well, it could go south, but let's see what happened. Let's look at what happened to Ukraine. I'm sorry, this is the last 24 hours thing for you, but we all remember how poorly that meeting with President Zelensky went in the Oval Office, right? Yeah. Now, what has happened in the last few hours? Donald Trump has basically started trashing Russia. Now, he hasn't put on new sanctions on Russia. We all know that's the big issue. But he has verbally, in his meeting with President Zelensky in New York, trashed Russia and supported Ukraine. So even if it did go poorly for the Albanese meeting with Donald Trump, would it stay that way forever? Yeah. No, I think the structural dynamics of the U.S. and Australia to not only get along, but to work together are so strong that it would, even worst case scenario, they can right that ship fairly quickly.
You may have just answered the question I was about to ask you, but yeah, in fact, I think you have. But let's just see if you have anything else to add, which was, I was going to say that I agreed with everything you said up to that point, but I wanted to flag, maybe it's just as a devil's advocate, the possible reason why you could say Albo should stay away is not because we don't have anything to do with Trump or Trump's a loser. No, we all hate Trump. Nothing like that. But just sometimes Trump just makes up his mind about someone, like just because they're on the left.
Yeah,
and just goes, you know what, I'm playing my flag with the conservative side of that country. I know nothing about them, but I know who's on the right. I know who's on the left. And I'm going to support the one on the right. I'm going to hate on the one who's on the left. And by Albo just waking up the bear that's hibernating, could end up having the bear take a bite out of him. And that is the risk.
Right.
Yeah. So have you said anything, or you need to say in response to that just now, or is there something else?
Yeah. So let's think about a parallel to that. Yeah. Who is one European politician who Trump is perhaps closer to than any other in the UK?
Prince Andrew.
Nigel Farage.
Yes, Farage, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So he's enjoying a boost in popularity in the UK. Who just had a pretty amazing state visit to the UK and did not trash on that Labour prime minister whatsoever. Instead was completely supportive and aligned. There was no major drama. If anything, if you look at the press conference with the UK Prime Minister Starmer, Donald Trump, in my view, avoided tension when press members of the media were asking them some potentially contentious questions. So is there a right-wing equivalent of that here in Australia? No. And so you can see, if you bring that to the Australian context, Donald Trump doesn't even have a right-wing champion here like he does in the UK. And even if he did, would he champion him in the way that he didn't champion Nigel Farage? I just think there is so much going for Australia right now, and that it can't afford to be very risk averse right now.
That's a fair enough point. I suspect that Trump will not be championing Susan Ley anytime soon. So that's an excellent point.
Yeah. So that's and it gets into it's a long rant by my definition of rants, because it really gets to what I'm doing here in the first place, not in PEP, but in Australia. I really do believe that this has never been a more important time for Australia. And not only do I believe that, but I believe Australia has never had more influence, more impact in DC and around the world, but also more agency to actually choose what happens next. We saw this during the first Trump administration when the U.S. abandoned the Trans-Pacific Partnership, right? What happened next? All the countries could have just taken their toys and gone home. And I should clarify, what is the Trans-Pacific Partnership? It is a free trade deal that was initially started under the Obama administration, not fully ratified, and it included Japan and Australia and Vietnam and a number of countries around Southeast Asia. And it was to incentivize, similar to the WTO, to incentivize countries like China to improve their domestic economies, right? But now, let's not forget what happened in the first few days of the Trump administration. The U.S. left the TPP altogether and said, no, we're not doing that. Now, Australia and Japan could have just taken their toys and gone home and be like, the U.S. is gone. Let's just give up on this. But no, Canberra and Tokyo instead decided to continue it, but without the U.S., but to leave the door open to the U.S. coming back. Now, why did they continue it? Because they viewed it in their national interest to continue to have a multilateral trade agreement that incentivized better behavior from the region, that incentivized less state-owned enterprises owning the entire economy, to intellectual property standards, environmental standards, labor standards, right? Not just a trade deal of just talking about tariffs and tariffs alone, which is what the Chinese usually want to do, but actually trying to improve the economies in a way that is more favorable to U.S., Australian, and Japanese interests, and in my view, the long-term interests of the region. So I think that was a perfect example of how Australia exercised its agency, and it did it with allies and partners, and now is a more opportune time than ever to continue to do something like that.
Do you have a sense of what Albo wants to do?
There's a lot that he could do. I think there's a lot on the agenda that they could focus on. I think critical minerals and AUKUS are the two topics that will probably merit the most mention.
Yeah, I'd probably begin with the words rare and earth if I was him.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And as has been said many times, China processes about 90%, over 90% of them. And since 2010, they've used that as a course of the withholding of those processed minerals to coerce countries. It started with Japan, but now we saw, as you have covered extensively, that to the United States, and that sort of led to a different tact from the Trump administration on tariffs. So, yeah, I think Australia, which has a number of rare earths, really could be consequential on that. And again, though, this is a really fun time as a think tanker because we have to now think, we have security, like Article 5 in NATO. We have that very clearly defined of what an alliance looks like from a security perspective. But now we're in this really weird period where we have to think about what's maybe an economic alliance look like. What do we do if China continues to use its rare earths as a coercive method on different countries? This is not an efficient way of running your economy to have a completely separate rare earths supply chain, but maybe it's a necessary one. Again, this is economic security. This is not economics anymore. And I don't think we appreciate enough just how weird that period was in the late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s when we didn't have geopolitics in our sort of trade dealings whatsoever. And it was you'd have multinational companies just saying, oh, we're not really from any one country. It's like, no, that period is over. It's almost as weird as the fact that we haven't had a great war, a huge world war since World War II. That is very ahistorical and weird.
Trust the American to be going, why aren't you guys starting wars?
Right. That's what I'm calling for. More war.
That was great. Thank you. That's a whole area which I knew nothing about. So thank you very much.
I feel like as an American, I'm always encouraging Australia to think bigger and better. And my number one nemesis in Australia is tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
I'm always like, and I have to, as part of my job, we have a lot of visiting fellows, people who come from DC to Australia, and they meet with folks in Canberra. They do public and private events in Sydney. And the number one thing I always say is, like, please encourage them to do more. And when they hear it from me, they're tired of hearing it from me all the time. Like, it helps if someone says the same thing, and hopefully it can inspire them to think bigger.
Fair enough. They're not going to hear from me. I hate tall poppies.
Very good.
No, it's good stuff. Okay, let's go to last week. Obviously, there's an update this week on the topic of Jimmy Kimmel, but let's leave aside him returning today. I haven't watched it. You haven't watched it. No. That's I'm sure it will come up with Dave. Well, first of all, do you have, before I spotlight particular areas I want to focus on, we did talk at length about Jimmy Kimmel in the last PEP. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share generally about the Jimmy Kimmel situation?
Yeah, I think we just very briefly, we shouldn't divorce this situation, his plight and the other late night hosts from the economic reality that they are simply not making the money that they were. They're not getting the viewers that they were. Look at the viewers for Dave Letterman or even Johnny Carson. And it was literally 10 to 20 times as much as what Jimmy Kimmel is getting right now.
Yes.
Right? It's shocking how much more economically relevant they were just 10, 20 years ago than they are now. And, South Park has by no means pulled its punches on the Trump administration, yet somehow I'm not hearing anything about them getting canceled, perhaps because they have a bit more economic weight to the argument of keeping them.
I should say, though, having said that, I mean, that's absolutely the case. But having said that, I think across the board, ratings are just down. Like it's probably more so on the late night slot than some other slots. But just, I mean, with the exception of the NFL, like Law and Order would be rating a lot less now than it would have 20 years ago. Like just network TV just doesn't rate what it used to rate.
Cable network, all of them. The mainstream like media outlets are just nowhere near as relevant as they used to be. No one appreciates the fact that Joe Rogan has more followers than CNN or exponentially more than MSNBC.
And not just Joe Rogan, but all the new forms of entertainment are just a hell of a lot cheaper. All of them are a hell of a lot cheaper and they have a hell of a lot more viewers. Which means that if you are getting rid of Kimmel or Colbert or anything like that for economic reasons, what are you going to replace them with? Because whatever it is going to also rate nothing and probably cost more than Joe Rogan.
At least one of the companies that is deciding not to run Jimmy Kimmel is saying they're going to run news.
Oh, this is Sinclair. Yeah, they got their own bag, Sinclair.
And I think we talked in a prior PEP about what Sinclair has put on.
Yes.
If you look at any of those fairly disturbing videos.
Yeah. A couple of things. I'm going to just make some random points because I have talked a lot about this. And you can jump in anytime you want with any other points or comment on whatever. First of all, this was this week, but Disney, when they announced that he was coming back, they said something interesting, which I just noted, which was, last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It's a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached a decision to return the show on Tuesday. Now, notice what they didn't say. They didn't say inaccurate. They said insensitive. The reason why Brendan Carr said that it should be suspended was because they're inaccurate. They're not acknowledging that, which I found interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think they underestimated the backlash.
Yeah.
And that's it. They just underestimated the fact that Ted Cruz, of all people, would be like, what are you doing?
Yes. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second. In fact, we'll talk about that in a second. About why it came back so fast. And what does that mean? Do we know for a fact, though, that Brendan Carr was responsible? I think that is a live question. But because I've been challenged by one of our dear peppers in Russo Man. Russo Man says, Chaz, I totally agree that the government should not be stifling free speech, but you citing the firing timeline as proof that this occurred is your speculation. It's not proof. Disney fired Kimmel, not Carr. Why they did it is their business and known only to them. Unfortunately, Carr's words may have influenced that decision and would have been better left unsaid. But I ask you, was there interference in free speech when government agencies were influencing social media to suppress the Biden laptop story or ban Trump from Twitter? Kimmel is entitled to free speech, but he's not entitled to employment or a TV broadcast platform if his employer decides to fire him, and there were plenty of other reasons for that to happen other than what Brendan Carr said. Now, look, I think that's a very reasonable point. It is speculation from me. I don't know anything for a fact. I can't mind read what Disney was thinking or ABC. But let me respond. First, on the Biden laptop story, on Trump being banned from Twitter, on COVID misinformation, all the areas where there are concerns about expressed about the Biden administration interfering with social media. Let me respond to all of that. Forget the Trump ban. That happened before Biden was even president. So don't worry about that. So did the Hunter laptop story. That happened before Biden was president. So I don't think the Biden presidency was putting pressure on anyone on either of those two stories. Okay, so let's forget that. There were definite attempts to influence social media by the Biden administration about COVID misinformation. Definitely. We saw the Supreme Court case. There were efforts.
Yep.
The Supreme Court, though, did not rule against the government as infringing the First Amendment because of bullying social media companies. Why didn't they? It came down to Amy Coney Barrett, basically. Amy Coney Barrett was concerned that there was, quote, a lack of specific causation findings with respect to any discrete instance of content moderation. Put that in English, she said there's no connection between their pressure and between the actual decision. So at least no provable connection.
Yep.
And she had some good reasoning. She pointed to some of the timing. She said sometimes the social media companies were acting before there was any pressure. So clearly the social media companies were moving in the same direction, regardless of what the government pressured them, tried to pressure them before. It was a bit messy, no doubt about that, and I don't think the government should have done it. But having said that, there wasn't as clear a connection as there appeared to be in this case. The timing, yes, you're right, that's my speculation, but it was, I think, noteworthy that they didn't jump until immediately after Brendan Carr's threats. Can we prove a connection? No, we can't, though. So I think that Russ O'Man's point is fair enough in that respect. Do you have a reply for Russ O'Man?
I really don't, and I really did not go to law school like yourself, so I'm completely out of my depth here. But I have to wonder, though, whether if Jimmy Carr were fired, not just suspended temporarily, but
Jimmy Kimmel.
I'm so sorry.
I kept on doing that too.
Yeah, I think we both have our preferred comedian of the two of those.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It says a lot, doesn't it?
Twinsies.
Yes.
The question is whether Jimmy Kimmel if he were fired, whether he would have a legal case against Disney or even against the FCC.
Yes.
And I think there's this concept that I've heard, tortuous contract interference, perhaps, and that is a legal case to be made against the FCC.
Yeah. Not against Disney, but the FCC maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, why don't we go through what we know for a fact rather than my speculation?
Okay.
Because I think that's a valuable thing to do. Okay, so these are things that we know for a fact, not speculation, Russo Man. We know that Nexstar, the largest station group in the country, has a merger proposal before the FCC where they would end up owning stations affecting 80% of US households, which is twice the current maximum. The current maximum is 39% of US households. So the FCC would have to relax those limits in order for that to happen. Sinclair also has a proposal for deregulation in front of the FCC. We know that. We know that the Walt Disney Corporation, which is the owner of ABC, wants the FCC to greenlight ESPN's deal to purchase the NFL network. We know that also for a fact. And we know that Brendan Carr made very clear that, in his view, Jimmy Kimmel should probably be suspended. Not fired, suspended. Which is why it's interesting that he came back so quickly from suspension. People have been suggesting that, the fact he came back so quickly, that's evidence that the FCC isn't threatening anybody. I actually think it's the direct opposite. If he was being axed for ratings, he wouldn't be coming back.
Nope.
But what Brendan Carr said is suspend him. And then they did. And then they brought him back. Sounds to me like they're following Brendan Carr's advice.
Interesting.
I'll throw it out there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No.
No? Okay.
I also haven't watched Jimmy Kimmel in a very long time.
Yeah, no, right. Also, note that there were other potential sanctions that Brendan Carr could have opted for. He could have pushed for an apology or a clarification from ABC or write a reply from someone on the right. FCC guidelines recommend more speech rather than less speech when there's a concern. That's what the guidelines say. Quote, no regulation or condition shall be promulgated or fixed by the Commission which shall interfere with the right of free speech by means of over-the-air broadcast communication. So the FCC has long held that the public interest is best served by permitting free expression of views. Rather than suppress speech, communications law and policy seeks to encourage responsive counter-speech from others. Following this principle ensures that the most diverse and opposing opinions will be expressed, even though some views or expressions may be highly offensive. So what that's saying is Brendan Carr recommending suspension goes against FCC guidelines. We know that.
I wonder who enforces FCC guidelines.
Well, right now, nobody. That's part of the fun. There is some evidence, to be fair to Russo Man, that ABC did make this decision on their own. Number one, Kimmel's ratings have not been good, like we said, like all late night shows. They've been going down for years. His ratings are no better than Colbert's, who's apparently losing $40 million a year. So Kimmel can't be doing too well financially. Disney has shown no hesitation to take on politicians when they want to. They took on DeSantis hard. They have plenty of money to do so. So why didn't they fight? Why didn't they take him to court? If there's a Supreme Court case, then there is NRA versus Valo, which is just a perfect parallel for them to take Brendan Carr to court. Why didn't they?
Sorry, who was president when Disney took on DeSantis?
That would have been Biden. Yeah, that might be the answer to the question. And it might be because the NFL channel deal. They want to keep their bread buttered. Or maybe it's a sign that the FCC was pressuring them to make a decision that they wanted to make anyway.
Yeah.
And they want to use the FCC as an excuse, make them the bad guy. Maybe, we don't know. The Wall Street Journal does say that Kimmel had planned to address Carr's comments on his show Wednesday night, according to people familiar with the matter. Before his on-air appearance, Dana Walden, co-chairman of Disney Entertainment, spoke to the host about his plan. After the conversation between Kimmel and Walden, she and other senior executives thought the star's approach could make the situation worse, people with the conversation said. A person close to the show said that Kimmel was plain to say these words were being purposely twisted by some members of the Make America Great Again movement. So maybe they just need to take the heat out of the situation a bit, regardless of what Brendan Carr said. Maybe. We don't know. So that's the other side. That's the other side, Russo Man. I want to be fair. We've got all sides there. But if the FCC weren't to blame, then why were conservatives trying to gaslight us? I cite number one, Brendan Carr. This is what he said after Jimmy Kimmel was suspended. Broadcasters have long retained the right to not air national programs that they believe are inconsistent with the public interest, including their local community's values. I'm glad to see that many broadcasters are responding to their viewers as intended. Whatever the reason that the TV stations suspended Kimmel, it wasn't because of public interest. And Carr knows that. So why is he lying? Hannity. Have a look at Hannity here. This is just the most blatant, obvious attempt to gaslight.
Now, the left already, starting with Humpty Dumpty, fake news, CNN, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, predictably claiming this is conservative censorship. The MAGA crowd, Donald Trump got Jimmy Kimmel. That is false. I can't find a single prominent conservative voice in the country that even remotely wanted or hoped or was pushing to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air. Nobody, it just was simple. People changed the channel. They didn't watch him. Not one person can I think of. Maybe there's one, but I can't think of them. Now, truth be told, Jimmy Kimmel's show was failing spectacularly. I've seen the ratings. They're awful.
Hannity can't think of one person on the right who was pushing for Jimmy Kimmel to be sacked. Not one person. No matter how he strains his brain, he can't think of one person in America, one conservative person who might not like Jimmy Kimmel. Who could that be? Who could that be? Little reminder for you here, Hannity. The word is, and it's a strong word at that, Jimmy Kimmel's next to go in the untalented late night sweepstakes. It's really good to see them go, and I hope I played a major part in it, said Donald Trump.
In July. I could have cited 20 other tweets. Yeah.
I don't think Hannity's trying very hard. That is what they call gaslighting. Why are they gaslighting if the case is so easy to make that it wasn't the FCC to blame? I suggest they're being very, very defensive. But either way, what the FCC did was a worry in my view, and I believe I believe that you might have some evidence that the FCC was behaving in worrying ways.
Well, as was mentioned by Sean Hannity there, he mentioned Humpty Dumpty,
Yes.
which is, I believe, referring to Brian Stelter,
Yes.
well-known media commentator, as in he comments on the media itself, and he's had a show on CNN, and or he does now. This is a quote, and we can put it up on the screen. I asked, this is from Brian, I asked FCC Chair Brendan Carr if he had any new comment now that ABC has pulled Jimmy Kimmel's show, and he sent me this GIF. Now, for those that cannot see it, it is a GIF from the office of Rainn Wilson and Steve Carell making sort of a celebratory raise the roof type of type of gesture. So yeah, I don't know how to transcribe that in a concise way by a journalist, and so I don't think Brian did either, and so he just posted the GIF as it was sent to him.
Look, I do admit that's funny. You just got to pay it sometimes. It's funny, but at the same time, the fact that the head of the FCC is just in full troll mode, that's a concern. He actually has responsibility.
Just a quick aside, in terms of funny and troll mode, we won't get to today, but I found myself laughing out loud at Donald Trump's UN speech today more than I'd ever in any Trump speech before.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. I haven't watched that yet. I'm going to watch that tonight. So, okay, cool. I'm sure it'll be Friday as well. We'll have to talk about it on Friday. Okay, more on the FCC, why it was a worry. Brendan Carr suggested that Kimmel had committed news distortion. That's what he said. This is what the FCC says about news distortion. News distortion must involve a significant event and not merely a minor or incidental aspect of the news report. In weighing the constitutionality of the policy, courts have recognised that the policy makes a crucial distinction between deliberate distortion and mere inaccuracy of difference or opinion. As a result, broadcasters are only subject to enforcement if it can be proven that they have deliberately distorted a factual news report. Expressions of opinion or errors stemming from mistakes are not actionable. This is not a factual news report. It's a comedy monologue. Even if it's not funny, it's still not a factual news report. And it's clearly a mere inaccuracy at best. It wasn't even a statement. It was an implication. He implied that the guy was right-wing. He didn't even say it. So at best, it's a mere inaccuracy, and it's not a factual news report. So it's just blatantly against the guidelines, which, as you correctly note, aren't being enforced. Second thing, was it a hoax? Because the FCC is allowed to hand down sanctions for the broadcast of hoaxes. Hoaxes are defined as the propagation of intentionally false information that will directly cause foreseeable and substantial public harm. The factual claim in this case is that the MAGA gang, whatever that means, tried to explain that they had no associations with Kirk's assassin, and they tried to derive political benefit from that explanation. That's a paraphrase of the claim made by Kimmel, right? That isn't a factual statement. It's an opinion or a theory. You can't prove it's true. What does the MAGA gang even mean? How can you prove the MAGA gang's motivations? You can't. So it's not a statement of fact. And how can you show that Kimmel was intentionally deceiving people when he's a known partisan hack? Everyone knows Jimmy Kimmel is a partisan hack. I'm sorry if you love Jimmy Kimmel. He's a partisan hack. All over the internet, lefties at the time were, like Heather Cox Richardson, were arguing hard that the shooter could be an extreme right-winger. Why couldn't Kimmel be kidding himself? Why couldn't he believe Heather Cox Richardson? Lots of lefties did. So I don't see how you can make the case he was intentionally deceiving people. So it's not a hoax. Clearly, Brendan Carr was making shit up here. He wasn't following FCC guidelines. I'm sorry. So these threats from Carr were a huge worry. They're totally over the line. Also, massive hypocrite. This is him in 2019. Should the government censor speech it doesn't like? Of course not. The FCC does not have a roving mandate to police speech in the name of the public interest. If I was going to summarize exactly what his position was now, it's that the FCC has a roving mandate to police speech in the name of the public interest. So, hack. Also, it violated Trump's executive order. If you don't remember the one, restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship, says no federal government officer, employee or agent should engage or facilitate any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen. And it said that no taxpayer resources should be used to similarly restrict a citizen's First Amendment right. And also, by the way, people hate it as well, this decision. Asked how they felt about ABC taking Kimmel off the air after the head of the FCC jawboned the network. According to YouGov, 35% respondents approved, 50% disapproved. Okay, so it's a worry. Why didn't they sue? If it's so clear that legally they're on terrible ground, why didn't they sue? In the Murphy case, that was the social media case, the COVID case, the Biden administration pressuring social media for COVID. In the Murphy case, they didn't establish a connection, but this was the standard to sue, according to Neil Gorsuch. Could the government's conduct when viewed in context be reasonably understood to convey a threat of adverse government action?
Sorry, can we just add, this is Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch,
yes.
For those who don't know each member of the Supreme Court by name.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Yes, this is right. Could the government's conduct when viewed in context be reasonably understood to convey a threat of adverse government action in order to punish or suppress the plaintiff's speech? In this case, I think Brennan Carr did convey a threat. You can do this the easy way or the hard way. That's a threat. I'm not going to use the accents like Ted Cruz did.
It was not bad.
I think it was bad.
For a politician, your standards are way too high.
Yeah, just to be clear, I want to be very clear. I'm not being offended here on behalf of Italians and mafioso. I'm just saying that was an atrocious accent. I'm being offended on behalf of fans of comedy. But, so to me, this sounds like a clear case. Does it mean that maybe I'm wrong, that there wasn't a clear case? Is this evidence that Brennan Carr was just giving them an excuse to do what they wanted to do, maybe? There's no way we can know. I'm just giving you the facts. That's all I'm doing. And maybe they're guessing. Here's a thought. This is a scary thought. This is a sad thought. Maybe the reason they didn't sue, apart from the fact they didn't want to screw up their NFL deal, was they're guessing that America is heading to a place where the law doesn't matter anymore, which increasingly a lot of peppers are in that place. They keep on telling me, why are you talking about the law?
I was just about to say, I really appreciate your good faith argument for the legal implications of this, or at least I should say the legal arguments for this, when many would say they're immaterial to the facts on the ground. Yeah.
Just an aside as well, what they're dwelling on, what they're accusing Kimmel of, he didn't do. They said Kimmel was mocking Kirk's death. It wasn't even about Kirk, it was MAGA. Yeah. In fact, Jimmy Kimmel, after Kirk died, this hasn't been covered much, said really nice things.
He did. Yeah.
Like this is on Instagram. He said, instead of the angry finger pointing, can we just for one day agree that it's horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks and to all the children, parents and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence.
Yeah.
Can't fault that.
Nope.
Having been in a writing room for much of my life, I can tell you, I saw the whole monologue, like 3 days worth of whole monologues after the shooting. There is no doubt in my mind he avoided talking about Charlie Kirk on purpose.
Yeah.
There's no way he completely avoided talking about Charlie Kirk the whole time. Like every joke was lateral, taking a weird angle. It was about Trump. It was about everything but Charlie Kirk. He wasn't trying to get Charlie Kirk. Like he was trying to avoid him. One more thing on Jimmy Kimmel. I don't think he's very funny, but he is actually a decent guy, I think. Yeah. In 2023, the unions required members to earn at least $26,000 from acting work in order to qualify for their health insurance plan. So this is what Kimmel did. During that, like on his show, they put out casting notices when they needed actors, that they were only going to consider actors who were within $1,400 of meeting the minimum requirement to even be considered. Sorry, the minimum requirement for health insurance to even be considered to appear on their show. So that way they could get them up to get health insurance. Yeah. They were trying to help actors get health insurance.
Yeah. No, he's really known for being a good guy.
Yeah, which I think is really good.
Despite as you can see if you go on X these days, the pretty controversial background he had on the Man Show with Adam Carolla.
Yes, yes. Well, they were different times.
Very different times.
They were. Oh, another thing, just another random thing. Let's not let the ABC off the hook here either. We keep on talking about Brennan Carr, but I thought the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression nailed this.
I'm shocked that you're reading from them again.
I love them. I love those guys. I love them. The government pressured ABC and ABC caved. Another media outlet withering under government pressure, ensuring that the administration will continue to extort and exact retribution on broadcasters and publishers who criticise it. We cannot be a country where late-night talk show hosts serve at the pleasure of the president. But until institutions grow a backbone and learn to resist government pressure, that is the country we are. 100%. Trump gets stronger every time someone caves. It just keeps on happening.
Can I read an editorial from an even more right-wing partisan outlet on this?
Go for it. Yeah.
So the National Review,
Yep.
which is known for decades now for being sort of a conservative outlet, and at times they were anti-Trump, but now they are pretty supportive of Trump. They have an editorial, so not by any one person, but an editorial by the editors, and the title of it is just "Abolish the FCC."
Yep.
We remember this during the Obama administration, during the Biden administration, that Republicans never loved the FCC. But I'll just read one specific paragraph, the conclusion. Empowering so-called independent agencies with nebulous laws that cover vast swaths of American industry is an open invitation for abuse by politicians and bureaucrats. The FCC is no longer needed if it ever was. Rather than fantasizing about using government power to punish the left, leaving open the invitation to be punished again when Democrats regain power, Republicans should foreclose the possibility of future suppression by shutting down the FCC.
What do you think?
That's consistent. I mean, we're talking a lot these days about hypocrisy. That is consistent with what they've been saying for decades.
That is certainly the case. They're no questioning their intellectual consistency. What do you think of their argument?
Yeah, I think ultimately I'm no media expert or media law expert, but from everything I know about the FCC, it was created during a very different period.
Yeah, created during radio.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And so is that relevant to this period now? Doesn't seem so. But again, I would love to hear a media law expert defend it if there is one. Yeah.
Look, I'd like to hear someone defend it as well. My personal view, and I'm sure the Peppers at the moment are already rolling their eyes. They're going, here we go. Here comes the libertarian talking about the FCC. Yeah, I reckon I should get rid of it. But the reason for that is because I'm not saying there's no role for potential media regulation, but the current situation is untenable where the only people that are regulated are broadcast TV, which no one watches anymore. Like, I don't think my kids even know broadcast TV exists.
We should clarify the broadcast. This is not ABC headquarters TV. This is the local affiliates. That is the issue here. So Jimmy Kimmel could technically continue even if the Sinclair and everyone decide to not run him. But it's all about that local market and the local TV stations.
Yes. That
is where the FCC has power.
Yeah.
Nothing over actual ESPN.
That's true.
That's what's so interesting and again, like perhaps anachronistic about our media diet these days.
But also, we are possibly within a decade of them shutting off those channels entirely.
Yep.
Like it's just increasingly untenable for the FCC to have power over a part of the broadcast spectrum which no one watches, while everyone is watching YouTube and like the internet stuff or streaming or cable or whatever. None of them are regulated by the FCC.
Yeah.
So what's the point? Like it just seems ridiculous. Like you could, if the left wanted to go into full revenge mode, and I strongly recommend they don't, but if they wanted to go into full revenge mode, when they take over again, they could go, okay, let's play by Brennan Carr's rules. Yeah. We are going to enforce the public interest now. We are defining the public interest as essentially left-wing views, and we are going to just crack down. We're going to find the hell out of every TV station that isn't essentially PBS.
Yeah.
they could do that. And if they did do that, it wouldn't matter because people would just stop watching those channels and they just switch off broadcast TV for good.
Yep.
That's where we're at. And so I just feel like it's an anachronism. I don't know what you have in its place or if you have nothing in its place. But once again, we're talking about genies and bottles a lot. The genie is well out of the bottle on this one. I don't know what you do. But the FCC ain't the answer, I'll tell you that. Okay, so I did flag this question for you before. Now that Kimmel's back on air, will you just move on? No problems? Everything's cool? Or is their damage done?
Yeah, as you said, genie's out of the bottle on this, and it's only a matter of time, in my view, before not only has the viewership gone down, but the quality is expected to remain the same, right? So in many ways, the budgets are the same, or at least the demands for budgets are the same, but the revenue keeps decreasing.
Yeah.
Like, this is untenable, right? And that's why we've already seen, even before Trump took office, other late night host James Corden, who was even, in my view, less funny than Jimmy Kimmel, taken off the air as well. And
it was just painful.
But as much as I would love to see you on car karaoke?
James? God, carpool karaoke.
Carpool karaoke. Thank you. I think you'd be a fantastic guest for that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
But no, I don't see it's tenable. What we have expected from late night hosts. But again, the question is, what do you replace it with? It was such a staple part of American culture.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, as we've talked about this a million times, outside the Super Bowl and the NFL and maybe NBA, what brings Americans together culturally anymore?
Yeah, that's what you replace it with is a different question from what brings America together culturally. I don't know the answer to that question.
That's true. That's two questions.
By the way, if people think I'm needlessly negative about all these late night hosts, can I just say Craig Ferguson was brilliant. I loved Craig Ferguson.
That's a great point.
He was just the best.
And a lot of that content is still on YouTube.
And it's well worth watching. I strongly recommend you watching Craig Ferguson videos. He was very good.
Couldn't agree more.
And I loved, and I was a big Letterman fan back in the day as well, I should say.
Best music.
Yeah.
He always got the best music, Dave Letterman.
He did.
Best performances that bands had ever done. Mm-hmm. I literally just sent someone a Dave Letterman clip yesterday of a band that was so good.
There you go. I think we've still got First Amendment issues, even though Kimmel's back. To me, it's not. I think the damage is done. It was never about Kimmel. It was about the First Amendment.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I'm worried that some conservatives have now decided the First Amendment is problematic because it restricts Trump. For instance, Cynthia Loomis, she told Semaphore, she's a senator from Wyoming. Under normal times, in normal circumstances, I tend to think the First Amendment should always be sort of ultimate right, and that there should be almost no checks and balances on it. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like something's changed culturally, and I think there needs to be some cognizance that things have changed. We just can't just let people call each other those kinds of insane things and then be surprised when politicians get shot and the death threats they're receiving and then try to get extra money for security. Kayleigh McEnany on Fox, this just put a dagger through my heart, this clip.
And for all the concern about the First Amendment, they're apoplectic, Jesse. What about all the amendments that Charlie Kirk lost? Because Charlie Kirk has no amendments right now.
What about all the amendments that Charlie Kirk lost? He has no amendments because he's dead, you see. So therefore, we should just trash the Constitution.
I wish Jesse had intervened and be like, "What? How do you define an amendment of a human body? What is that?"
Oh God. Anyway, I could keep on playing Fox clips. I won't because I don't want to waste your time. But they've gone hard against the First Amendment in the last few days. Trump obviously has no interest in the First Amendment at all. No. He didn't spend 1 second pretending that Jimmy Kimmel should be censored because of the public interest or because he was spreading misinformation. For Trump, it was clearly about censoring critics from the beginning to the end.
Well, I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I got 97% negative. If they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Kirk. When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. When somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech, that's no longer anything, that's just cheating.
I really need to know, what is the correct percentage? If it's not 97%, where are we okay with it?
All he cares about is people criticizing him.
I think we should also highlight the fact that the First Amendment is the first, and therefore, in many ways, some would say the most important, but also the fact that Americans define freedom of speech very differently than other democracies. You have democracies in here, Australia being one of them, and the UK, a lot of Europe, where defamation laws are very different than what they are in the U.S. I've seen numerous times now where journalists will have information on someone here or in the UK and not actually pursue it or publish it because they are so afraid of the defamation case against them. Whereas the sort of burden of proof for defamation in the U.S. is significantly higher than it is. I mean, the only other country similar to the U.S. level is Taiwan. And now I'm going to get a lot of hatred for saying Taiwan's a country. But anyway, I still think the U.S. definition of freedom of speech is in many ways extreme compared to other democracies around the world.
Yeah, but even in democracies around the world, they don't define free speech as not criticizing Trump.
You couldn't agree more. Can I just say one really interesting case study of this is if you look up Elton John and his husband and what got reported in the UK media versus what got reported in the US media. Yeah. I'll just say a lot more got reported in the US media than the UK media because of that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I was going to say, if you look at Trump's initial reaction when he heard Kimmel was suspended, it was notable for a number of reasons. Great news for America. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel show is cancelled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel had zero talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. So, a few notes. 1, I wouldn't call ABC caving to pressure courageous. 2, he immediately moves to punishing other people who no one is accusing of lying. In Jimmy Fallon's case, he isn't very political anyway. So if Fallon doesn't clear Trump's bar, then no one short of a sycophant would clear his bar.
Yeah, Jimmy Fallon, is famous for grabbing Trump's hair. That's what he's famous for when it comes to Donald Trump. Yeah.
And 3, importantly there, Trump is trying to rub it in the left's face and take credit for the decision. He likes the idea of being blamed for censoring Kimmel. He likes it, which is the same thing he did when Colbert was fired. He reveled in it. He took credit for hopefully getting the other late night guys sacked. I played you that tweet before where him saying it's really good to see them go. I hope I played a major part in it. He's taking credit for it, which is the same as Carr. Carr didn't need to issue that ultimatum in public.
Nope.
He could have done it behind the scenes.
Yep.
And if he had, when ABC suspended Kimmel, they would have said, it's for commercial reasons. And that would have been good for ABC. But Carr didn't want deniability. They wanted people to see, Carr wanted people to see them coercing broadcasters. He wanted it.
Yep.
Why? Because they wanted to make an example of Disney.
Of course.
They want the chilling effect. They want it.
Yep.
They want to be against the First Amendment. That's what they want, which is what scares me the most.
Yeah.
Like, it's not accidentally or they had this particular goal and they were just going to push the First Amendment out of the way. No, they wanted to be seen as the administration that doesn't give a shit about your freedom of speech. You're going to toe the line or you're going down. That is scary. Also, to me, it's a bit scary that they know their supporters enjoy watching you suffer. Hence, Brendan Carr's office gif.
Yeah.
Which is also depressing, and by no means, by the way, exclusive to Republicans. That's the sad state of America. Like, a lot of people like watching their opponents suffer at the moment.
Negative partisanship.
Yeah,
totally. Has defined every election for the last, 15 years.
Yep. Do you have anything else to say about this topic at all?
When I saw that tweet before, it said
Yeah.
Jimmy and Seth, as
Yeah.
in Jimmy Fallon and Seth
Seth
Meyers.
Meyers, yeah.
For a second, I thought it said Sean, as in Jimmy Carr and Sean Locke, another fantastic comedian who I
Sean
encourage everyone to check out.
Brilliant comedian. Brilliant
One of the
comedian.
best. Carrot in the Box. Everyone should check out that clip.
Definitely. Well, I was going to say, 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown generally. It was a
Oh, it's all
brilliant
gold.
show.
But that
Brilliant
specific
show.
episode with Sean Locke doing Carrot in the Box.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Versus John Richardson. I would strongly recommend it, yes. We'll put in the homework. We're going to put Carrot in the Box in the homework. Have a look in the homework. This is important homework. Do your homework, folks. Okay, so this is not really about Jimmy Kimmel, but it's somewhat related. Just a final point, which hasn't, I think, been mentioned enough. This whole episode is giving us a window into a real problem in America, I think, which is corporate consolidation.
Oh, yeah.
The cancellation happened because Nexstar and Sinclair were big and powerful enough to control a large number of TV stations. That's why it happened. The reason they acted was likely because they want to become bigger and more powerful and have more control. This is going to become worse. In 1983, 50 companies controlled 90% of the US broadcast media market. It's now 6. And right now, it is rapidly growing worse. The Ellisons, that's Larry and his son, are about to own Paramount and CBS.
Yep.
They're also about to own TikTok.
Partially.
Yeah. Let's have a look at how much of that 80% is the Ellisons. I
Yeah.
think you'll find a substantial amount.
Yeah.
That's apparently they're about to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, HBO, and CNN. And they get along with Trump real nice. All right? So that's them. Then you got Bezos with Washington Post. You got Twitter. You got Facebook. You got the Murdoch media empire. PBS and NPR are heavily compromised, possibly not existing soon. A lot of the media are going to be in the hands of potential allies of Trump. Never mind online media, which is dominated by conservatives. All of a sudden, Trump allies would own a lot of the broadcast, print, and online media scenario. As for the other media, well, Trump can attack their effectiveness through spurious administrative actions like he did with Harvard, through lawsuits, keeping them busy defending themselves. Some of them, he'll browbeat into conceding. Most of them he won't browbeat, but he can wear them down and make them less effective as opposition. This is a real threat to American freedom. It really is. And I don't think we're talking enough about it.
Yeah. I agree with you. Also, I think we've talked about this before, but it's not clear to me what sort of media model, news or otherwise, is the most sustainable. Outside of, TikTok and Facebook, it's so hard for in media to make money these days. And I think that's one of the drivers of the endless mergers and acquisitions in the FCC that the FCC has to approve. That's the thing. Like, there will, you might say, oh, because this is just a weird time that there's a few mergers and acquisitions ahead of that the FCC has to approve, and so it's just this is not normal. No, there are endless M&A activity in the media industry. And it's the only growth market in many ways in the media industry is M&A, paying M&A lawyers.
Yeah, mergers and acquisitions.
And so it continues to be an issue that the FCC will have to oversee as long as the laws stay the way they are.
While you're running hot, why don't you tell us about Kamala's book?
Oh man, Kamala's book, which is out today.
Great ad. Supervisor, just block your ears.
Oh, really? I can't even do a book?
Yeah,
oh,
I
man.
know you can. It's all right. I don't think Kamala Harris counts. It's all right.
Yeah. So her book called 107 Days is a book. I haven't read it. I've read excerpts of it because I'm sorry. I've failed the Peppers for not having read the full book in the few hours that it's been live. I will have read it by the next PEP appearance. It reminds me of what Hillary Clinton did after she lost the 2016 election. She came out with a book called What Happened. And it was a lot of literally what happened, why did she lose, but also what happened afterwards. And a lot of people saw that book or they had some questions, myself included. I think there's one scene in particular that really solidified my questions about Hillary Clinton, is that she talked about how her staff, she was doing a cross-country trip with her staff, and she pre-programmed, she had the staff, she was so grateful, she said, because the staff had pre-programmed her car radio to only pick up NPR in every single part of the country that she was driving through. And I think that was so telling on so many different levels. One, you only have to look at the partisan bias or persuasion, at least, of NPR listeners to see that you're identifying yourself as living in a bubble, right? Two, the fact that she put it in her book. She didn't even realize that it's like a tell that she just wants to stay in her bubble in her book. And I think that leads me to my third point, which is, I'm lucky to work with a lot of wonks and nerds and people who have worked in government and worked out of government. I've never met someone who did not respect Hillary Clinton as a policymaker. But I still think as a politician, she was, I guess the term is, wanting. And that line in her book really solidified it for me. It was just like, why are you saying this? With that said, you'll still see to this day Hillary Clinton, and we've seen it just this week, often going on TV to talk about different matters. And that's not because she's from what I understand, seeking out every media opportunity because she's going to run again or something. She's done. But she still is respected as an intellect.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kamala Harris is. And I think there's a difference. As someone that works with politicians, but also retired politicians, you can notice there's different types of politicians, and some really do care about the issues and are respected for their command of detail and are passionate about it. And there are some who seem to be perhaps just more ambitious, and policy is sort of a byproduct to their ambitions. I think what Kamala Harris is doing with this book is making her seem more like the latter.
Why is that?
Because she is basically focusing, in my view, on a lot of her gripes with other Democrats and Republicans. She is looking backwards. She is not providing any sort of intellectual architecture of a future aspiration. She's instead relitigating the past. And not only does that make me think that she's not policy-oriented, but also makes me think that she perhaps just doesn't have a lot of wisdom, because why would you want to basically annoy a lot of your fellow Democrats in the way that she has? You name it, and she calls them out in her book. And she also doesn't, in my view, really do it in a gracious way. Instead, it just seems almost petty. She does not come off in this book well, in my view, from what I've read of it and from what people who have read the whole book have said about it. And it just seems to me that she not both does not show wisdom, but also does not show self-awareness for what this attitude brings. So just some of the issues she's brought up is the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. She basically said that he was measuring the drapes of and looking about. Go ahead.
Can I pick you up on this one? Because I've made a note on this one, which is that what she said was she said that he was poised, polished, and personable, but she said that he mused that he would want to be in the room for every decision. And that vice president is not a co-president, she said. Now, this is what she said when she was vice president.
He and I are in almost every meeting together, have made almost every decision together. I'm not going to talk about our private conversations, of course, but I can tell you that it is often the case that as I will ask his opinion about things, he will ask my opinion. And through that process, I think that we arrive at a good place. And
that seems to me to be showing the lack of self-awareness that you just described.
Yeah. It's and then also even Joe Biden famously said that he wanted to be the last in the room for the big decisions. That's not an unreasonable ask, right? And then there's what she said about her running mate and what she said.
That's scummy. Like her saying, I wanted Buttigieg instead, but he's gay, so sorry.
How many people can you insult with one line?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you're Tim Walz, thanks for that, because it's so obvious that Tim Walz wanted to campaign a different way.
Yeah,
like he's clearly look, I'm not some massive Tim Walz fan, but it's obvious he's of the Bill Clinton school of politics.
Yep.
Where he's a grabber and gripper. He's a handshaker. He's a back slapper. He's an old school, wearing rosettes on in a country fair. That kind of guy, right? That's him.
Yeah.
And he was forced to hide.
Yep.
Because that's what the Harris team wanted him to do.
Yep.
He was a team player. He never whinged about it. Note there's no book from him after the election whinging about this or dumping anything. He just took it and moved on.
Or whinging about him being too much of a team player and the way that her book does.
That's right. Yeah, I feel sorry for Tim Walz. I think she really stitched him up.
Yeah, no, it's really, and also maybe there's also some actions are telling. And I think she is of the mind that she believes in that famous quote, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I think, even here in Australia, it made the news here. She came out for basically, I believe, a real estate conference to Brisbane. Did she give any other talks? Did she talk about the importance of the U.S.-Australia alliance? Did she do anything substantive?
She didn't come on Planet America. We invited her. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, just think of if she were someone more policy oriented and just a patriot trying to do the right thing, why not do at least some media? And even because sometimes, with that said, to benefit of the doubt, maybe she had an exclusivity thing with that engagement in Brisbane. But then you can still do media later, right? You can still influence policy and really try to focus on the issues, which Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton do to this day, and Barack Obama. There are different types of politicians, and she, in my view, is showing that she is not one of those politicians who wants to be known for their policy accomplishments and ideas.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it did feel when you started off on that thread, it did feel to me slightly unfair to say, in a book called 107 Days, which is entirely about the 107 days when she was running for president. She's not talking about future policy. She's talking about the past. But having said that, number one, if this was Bill Clinton's book or Barack Obama's book, they would have smuggled some policy in there anyway. Number two, she never talks about policy, ever. You're right. No matter what she does, wherever she is, even when she was running for the presidency, she talks about policy as little as she can. And when she does, it's at a bumper sticker level. It's just true. Yeah.
Also, she didn't need to write a book called 107 Days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No one's forcing you to do it. That is true.
Yeah, she could have used this as a launching pad for, everyone does the book tour thing where they write a book and then they do a book tour, and it just so happens that that book tour requires a lot of stops in Iowa and New Hampshire. We know the playbook at this point. But why not write an aspirational book? Yeah. And there's so many different questions where I'm just so curious why there's so little self-awareness, so little wisdom. And it's who is her ghostwriter? Who is the team that signed off on this? I was hoping for better.
I'll give you one more example of what you're talking about as well, which I made a note of, which was, look, I've only read a few excerpts. I'm not going to pretend I know. I haven't read a lot of excerpts. I've just read a few excerpts. But every excerpt I've read is full of bitterness that ambitious Democrats didn't endorse her until the day after Biden pulled out. You go, hang on, what? One day after Biden pulled out, these people you're angry at endorsed you, but you don't think they endorsed you fast enough. And not only is that entitled, but it's complete. It once again lacks awareness, because the one thing that really went well for her was her start. Remember, she went off like a rocket, and everyone was like, I remember at the time I was thinking to myself, my God, I thought she was hopeless, but look at the going. Look at the first 3 weeks. It looked like she was going to be 10 points ahead of Trump. She flew out of the gate. So the late, in inverted commas, endorsements from other Democrats was not a factor.
Yeah.
And her being bitter about it now is weird. It's weird.
And I have to wonder if it's ultimately just self-defeating. Like, does she run for governor of California? Does she run for president again?
I don't think she's running for anything.
Yeah. And so she's settling scores for what?
Yeah. Well, that was my overwhelming question from what I'd seen so far is, why are you writing this book?
And no one can answer that question.
Yeah. Like, because you're right. It's not positioning her for anything in the future. Does she need the money? I don't know. Does she? She hasn't struck me as someone who's poor, but maybe she just wants the money. I don't know. Like, there are better ways to vent than to do it that way. I'll tell you that.
David Axelrod has a great quote. He says, if there's a political strategy here, it's a bad one.
Yes. Yeah. No, fair enough. Do you have other thoughts about that book? No?
No.
Okay. I've got a few Charlie Kirk leftover things here. I won't do all of them, at least not now, because I want to make sure we get through some of the other stuff later coming up.
Okay.
First of all, throw to you, because I've had lots of talking about Charlie Kirk so far. Is there anything you want to say about the Charlie Kirk? Any stage of the Charlie Kirk, from beginning to end, to the memorial, anything?
I really did love the remarks that his widow made at his funeral. And as someone personally of faith, I really thought that she took a faith-inspired approach that was, I think, both inspiring as well as appropriate. And the way that she forgave her widow's murderer was really just the way that I think I wish more would think of caring themselves. If you think about who are our sort of historical heroes in terms of behavior and models, and, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. In each instance, they faced tremendous persecution and suffering, and instead of seeking vengeance, they sought they aspired for something more, and they aspired for peace. And there's a lot of obviously debates about just how much they did, but in general, that's sort of the story that people try to take away from those role models. And I think that is exactly, in my view, what she was doing here. And it reminded me of a story. There's this one man who I try to tell a lot of friends and family about, named Daryl Davis. He's a blues musician, a black blues musician in the U.S., I believe from Louisiana. And he basically has convinced hundreds of Ku Klux Klan members to give up their robes. And he does this by befriending them. And, there's a lot of temptation to, when you encounter injustice or you encounter racism, to respond with anger. And he instead responded with love, which is exactly what Charlie Kirk's widow called for, not to meet hate with hate, but with love. And I think that is always the role model, in my view, someone like Daryl Davis, who I send his story out to so many people when we're so frustrated and angry at the injustice, sometimes grave injustices, is that like meeting hatred with hatred is just not sustainable. And I loved the way that she responded at the funeral to that, and it was such a inspiring moment in this very dark period.
I have to say, I shouldn't talk about this. I was really torn in this area for a number of reasons. In that, my instincts are kind of at war with my brain a bit. In that, look, I'm not religious and I'm very cynical. And it's funny because my morality is very similar to what it would be if I was super religious. But I'm actually quite pious in terms of my morality, but I just have none of the belief system behind it. I suppose you call me culturally Christian. So when I see Americans doing that kind of thing, like doing the forgiveness thing, and the breaths and the looking up at the sky and all that kind of stuff, and my instinct is just so cynical. I just go, they're putting it on, and
yeah.
I just it's but that's just so unfair. Like, my brain is going, come on, this is just, Americans are more earnest than Australians. I know Australian would never carry on like that, but Americans do. Shit, that's just who she is. Just chill out and the fact is, she didn't ask for this. No, like a 31-year-old didn't ask for her husband to be murdered. Like, she's not putting herself forward. There's not like her opportunity to shine or something. She's just like, she's the widow. Yeah. What do you expect her to do? So she's just been her. She's grieving in her own way. And I'm not going to criticize her for having fireworks at her memorial and all the shit that people go on about. Yeah. Like, I don't know the reason, but there is a reason. I know that. Yeah. It's not an accident. And I know my brain knows, no matter what my cynical instincts say when I see things, whatever. Like, I know that she did love her husband, and that this is horrible for her, and she's trying to make the best of a horrible situation to pay tribute to her husband and try and be there for her kids. Yep. And like, I totally get it. And so I don't want to impose my fractured worldview on her. Yeah. I want to just sit back and go, hats off, you're doing your best. And so, I even though like there were all kinds of moments during the memorial that were clanging with me, I know that's me. That's the issue there. It ain't her and it ain't them. They can mourn however the hell they want to mourn, just and it's, and it kind of gets me, it kind of gets my goat a bit when I see people trashing them online and stuff. You just go, well, you just don't know. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And maybe in 5 years' time, we look back and go, I was right to be instinctively cynical. And maybe she's just a shyster and she's, but maybe. But you know what? In the meantime, let's give them the benefit of the doubt because we have no reason to believe otherwise. Yeah, I think that it's completely reasonable to have skepticism. And those fireworks did look exactly like the entrance fireworks for wrestling matches. Yeah, for gladiators. But do you want to err on the side of giving people the benefit of the doubt or just being endlessly cynical? Yeah. And I try. I have the same challenge myself when I try to err on the side of giving people benefit of the doubt. And I will say, I would be surprised if she personally wanted those fireworks. Yeah. Like I said, you could come up with 50 different reasons, potential reasons why they were there. Yeah. Who knows? We don't know. We just don't know. No. So let's not be assholes. There you go. There you go. It's fantastic policy. Yes. Yeah, no, fair enough. Okay, I'll just pick a couple of random beats here that I have here, and I'll leave the rest for maybe the end. We'll see. Number one, I find the beatification of Charlie Kirk quite odd. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the memorial at all in any way, shape, or form. I'm talking about erecting statues of him in New College, in the Texas Capitol, in the US Capitol. In Oklahoma, there are politicians who want literally every public university to have in the state to have a Charlie Kirk Memorial Plaza, complete with a statue of Kirk and his family. He's constantly getting compared to Martin Luther King, even though he himself famously described King as awful and not a good person and said the Civil Rights Act that King fought for was a mistake. There are literally articles being written about his miracle wound in Fox News based on a tweet from Turning Point spokesperson Andrew Colvert. I don't know if you saw this. No. I'll read it to you. I just spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital. He said the bullet absolutely should have gone through, which is very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, an elk, etc. But it didn't go through. Charlie's body stopped it. It was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed. His bone was so healthy and the density was so impressive that he's like the man of steel. It should have gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him too. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. He's like, come on, what are we doing? Churches have been playing AI-generated speeches from Charlie Kirk from beyond the grave. Have you seen this?
First, I want you to know I'm fine not because my body is fine, but because my soul is secure in Christ. Death is not the end. It's a promotion. Don't waste 1 second mourning me. Double down on truth. Double down on courage. Double down on your faith and on your families. That is how you honor me. So dry your tears, pick up your cross, and get back in the fight. Do it with joy. Do it with strength. And never ever let evil think it won.
See, examples like that is where I don't feel bad feeling cynical.
No, so it's what I don't think enough people appreciate is, especially maybe younger folks, is what the conservative movement was all about, especially in the 90s. Remember with the Watergate scandal, they were all about bringing respectability back into the Oval Office. Who is a role model for the evangelical conservative movement right now? Who is better known than Charlie Kirk within the evangelical movement? So yes, we may think that the statues are perhaps over the top, but I can see where they're coming from in terms of wanting a role model to aspire to, because they all know Donald Trump is not that role model. They talk about Donald Trump being like a King Cyrus, sort of a guy who gets the job done, but is maybe not someone we personally aspire towards. But I think I can see it's like, okay, that makes sense to aspire to be like Charlie Kirk, because they can still see that even amongst people who were otherwise critical of him, including Ezra Klein, they can come out with positive language towards aspects of him.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense, but it still is a bit, I can also understand the cringing at the concept of Charlie Kirk getting statues.
Well, I think you answered the next bits as well, because the religious thing continues. On social media, there are all these freaky AI reenactments of Charlie Kirk meeting Jesus in various contexts. Like, for instance, this one here.
Welcome, my son. Your work is done. Come rest.
Yeah, that's Charlie Kirk and Jesus on the cloud. And we've got this one of him running to Jesus in heaven.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without words. Let me walk upon the world.
There's heaps more. There's a thread on Twitter that's collected these. I'll put in the homework if you've got a very strong stomach, but I won't waste any more time now doing this, because also they've got music that's copyrighted. So do you think it's all part of the same thing, just because they're looking for a religious figure?
Yeah, and I also think people, I still remember in terms of showing grace, I still remember after the attacks in France, at the concerts. I don't know if you remember that. I want to say it was 2014. I don't know the exact.
Is it Charlie Hebdo you're talking about?
No, not those. It was at the concert, 2015. Thank you. And I remember Colbert, actually, to bring it back to late night, he was highlighting how a lot of people had, in solidarity with France, activities that they were putting on social media. And people would sometimes they just do a flag, and a lot of Facebook profiles, they just do the tricolor French flag. But then some people would take photos of themselves eating French fries and be like, we're really supporting France tonight.
Oh, yeah.
And Colbert, I think rightfully, was like, you know what, that's their showing love. We can mock them very easily, but that's just what they think is important, and we shouldn't mock their earnestness too much. And I think with that, it's just like they really want to put their love of both Jesus and Charlie Kirk into something, and AI enables some interesting choices.
I think there might be, look, I don't know about the particular religious angle, but I do think that there is something going on with, when you combine this with all like the people gunning to try and cancel people who are saying anything even negative about Charlie Kirk in any way. Like not glorifying violence, just saying, I don't like Charlie Kirk. I think that if you combine them all, I think there is something going on there. I think there's a certain kind of person that needs to build up the tragedy of Charlie Kirk being shot. It's a tragedy. I'm not saying it's not a tragedy. It is a tragedy. It's a tragedy just for a family, if nothing else. It's a tragedy. But for them, it's not enough that it's a human tragedy. For them, it has to be a historic tragedy, akin Martin Luther King being shot.
Yeah.
because the reason why that is, I think, is because they want to be angry with the left.
Yeah, of course.
And they want a titanic struggle between good and evil.
Yep.
They've been building up this struggle for ages, for more than a decade. And this whole last election was encouraged by Trump to be seen in that respect, the final struggle between good and evil. You know, the whole, you only need to vote one more time because we just got to beat evil, you know? And, in reality, it hasn't panned out like that.
No.
In reality, there is no golden age. In reality, like all of Trump's promises, you're left with a D-grade plastic facsimile of what you were promised with gold spray paint on it. The Epstein stuff, that ain't working out like they hoped it would at all. No. The Q stuff is gone. The left folded like a cheap suit when it came to wokeness. They were expecting this big ding-dong bell on wokeness. The left just went, yeah, sure, whatever. The left haven't been acting like a satisfying adversary at all. They're fighting amongst themselves mostly.
Yeah.
Hakeem Jeffries doesn't come off like a Bond villain. He's not an end-of-round boss, Hakeem Jeffries. He's nobody. He's an insurance salesman, right?
Yeah.
The right, they're just left with the same world they had before, but with slightly higher prices. And I think they need to kind of fake up a climactic battle. They need to feel that. And I think they're trying to build this up to justify essentially civil war fiction. They're people who want to be fighting a civil war. Like a cool civil war, not one where people die, just one where you slag each other off on Twitter. It's I think there are people who want, like, it's amazing to me how quickly people on the right jump to, this is war, as soon as he got shot.
Sorry, we should clarify, not everyone on the right. Some people on the right.
Like I said, no, you're right. This is right to clarify, but like right at the top of that, I said there's a certain kind of person.
You're right.
And that kind of person is not every single person on the right.
No.
It's there is just a certain kind of person. I think that kind of person who's driving this shit, is who's driving the cancelling. Like the libs of TikTok type person is who I'm talking about. She wants a war.
Yeah.
Like she wants this stuff. She wants a struggle. You know, and that's number one. And number two, I think also there is a certain kind of person. Once again, not everyone. There's a certain kind of person I think was kind of jealous of the religious revival vibe of the George Floyd era from the left. And they're trying to create their own kind of George Floyd-y kind of moment at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think they might be the same people. But I think that I'm seeing strands of those two kinds of thoughts. And I wonder if that's what's going on for some of these people.
I think also, isn't there something to be said about people just wanting more meaning in their life more broadly? I remember in 2007 when people really started talking about Obama in ways that otherwise they'd only talk about Jesus, right? So I don't think it's unique to that, and I don't know if there's a violent struggle in terms of supporting Obama, but still, I think people having those sort of aspirational saints almost that they want to revere and they want to go to war for is not unique to any one side of politics. And I think we see it across the political spectrum in many ways. Yeah,
the left-wing violence problem. This is, question mark. This is something that the right have been trying to make a big deal out of.
Yeah.
Like we have a problem on the left with violence.
Yeah.
Do you have any initial thoughts before I get into some detail here or not?
I have wonky think tank thoughts, but I want to hear your details first.
Okay, well, make sure we get those wonky think tank thoughts. We might overlap a bit. That's it. Okay, I get why some on the right think that the left are into political violence. I get that. The lionization of Luigi Mangione in particular at the end of last year, by some on the right as well as by some on the left, but more by people on the left.
Yeah.
That was hard to ignore. Also, you have genuine weirdos out there like that dude Destiny, that streamer, who keeps on popping up on interview shows. He seems to be booked permanently on Piers Morgan these days. And this is what he said a few days after Charlie Kirk got shot.
You need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature. The issue is right now, they don't feel like there's any fear. Like, I don't know. It's like memes. It's just memes to everybody, I guess. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I don't care. I'm playing video games.
Stick to your video games, mate. Stop going Piers Morgan. You're not helping. So I understand why some think like that. But let's start with the stats. A 2022 ADL study over the previous decade found more than 3/4 of political murders in the United States resulted from right-wing motives. A graph here, Cato figures, decade by decade. For those who can't see, I'm not going to read all of them, but I will read the last decade, 2015 to 2025, 107 right-wing murders versus 37 left-wing murders. And every single decade, there's more right than left, a lot more right than left.
Can I just quickly add?
Yeah.
Cato is a more libertarian think tank, generally more conservative, but that specific researcher at Cato is known for being very pro-immigration and basically endlessly trolling the Trump administration for their crackdowns on immigration. So him having that chart on his or publishing that chart is not surprising whatsoever.
Yes, Alex Nariste we're talking about. He definitely is one of Trump's least favourite foils. The National Institute of Justice have a study as well. Since 1990, 227 far-right extremist events to 42 far-left extremist events. 404 Media has reported in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder that study was disappeared from the Justice Department website, which was interesting. There are other studies, but there's 3 I just cited. But yeah, honestly, I actually think all those stats are bullshit. How about that? I brought up the stats.
Let's hear it. Why?
Yeah, because I think that most of these studies are over extended periods of time to begin with, which is fair enough because you want to get a large sample size. Mm-hmm. But the world's changed in the last 3 or 4 years. It's changed.
So right and left are not the same people anymore.
They're not the same people at all. And they're different trends. The relevance of 985 or 992 to now is not so much, I think. I think who qualifies as left and right is completely different anyway in the last 20, 30 years. It's a very subjective assessment, what counts as left or right generally.
Yeah.
Especially since far right and far left don't have much to do with the mainstream left or mainstream right anyway. Like are we going to blame Democrats for anarchists and animal rights activists? Are we going to blame Republicans for full-on Nazis? Why? Neither of those groups have anything to do with the mainstream versions of left and right. Also, how do you define left and right at all when it comes to killing people? Violent people are often a weird mixture or kind of neither. They're all over them. They're nuts. They're all over the place.
Like the person who tried to assassinate Donald Trump. And recently there are 2 assassination attempts, right?
Yes.
But the one who actually shot him.
Yes.
I don't know what happened. We still don't know 100% the motive, but he supposedly was looking up both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and so we've just decided he was apolitical almost.
Yeah. The right keep calling him a left-winger, and we don't know that. We just don't know. He seemed to be just a weirdo. Also, on top of that, you can tell how subjective the assessment is by how wildly different the numbers are between each study. You look at there's like 5 studies out there and they all have completely different numbers. And you just go, well, clearly these can't be accurate if they all disagree with each other. I mean, they all have the same trend, but in terms of the actual numbers, they don't agree at all. Thirdly, most of these studies only count deaths. Political violence is a lot more than deaths. Political violence involves non-fatal intimidation as well, swatting, property damage, arson, threats. Certainly recently, people on the left do seem to be much more into looting and arson than they do into killing, but that's still political intimidation and political violence. Bottom line, I think most experts say that left-wing political violence from 1900 to 1975 was a lot more than it is now, like a lot more.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, right-wing violence did kind of take over. There's still probably more right-wing violence today than left-wing violence. I'm not saying there isn't. But what I'm saying is the exact numbers, I just wouldn't put numbers on them. I think it's a real grey area. I think people acting like there's faux precision here just invites someone to nitpick on their numbers and go, well, that's not true because of that. And how about that person? Is that a left-winger? Is that a right-winger? In the end of the day, it's probably more right-wing violence than left-wing violence. I think most experts agree on that. Yeah. And let's just leave it at that. Like I don't think it helps to be precise when when the stats are kind of rubbish, I think. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned one year in particular, 1975, because right now there's so many different quantitative measures out there about how violence has gotten so much worse. And, CSIS, a think tank in D.C., they found that the number of attacks in plots of political violence in the last 5 years is triple that of the preceding 25 years combined, right? So we just know political violence is higher. And also we're now seeing not just quantitatively, but also qualitatively, the politicians, left, right, and center, all talk about the threats being greater than ever. But the thing is, there's, to my mind, until just a year ago, there's only one politician still going who was very active in the 1970s. That was Joe Biden.
Yes.
So he was around, perhaps, or still growing up when there was a lot of political violence in the United States. And we forget, when Australians ask me about political violence, I always clarify that the literal founding of America was an act of political violence,
Yes.
the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
And then less than a century later, we had the Civil War, right? And then after that, we had Reconstruction.
Yeah.
Americans are very passionate about our government. And so political violence is not abnormal. You could almost say that political violence we're seeing is reverting to the mean. In terms of American history. Yeah. It's just that from the 1975 period onwards, that's when political violence has changed, right? In the last 10, 15 years, that's when things have changed. But if you compare now to 1960, 1965, we forget just how many assassinations there were in the 1960s in particular.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just left or right. It wasn't Democrat or Republican. It was assassinations, period. A lot. And so I think we have to sort of put the historical context into mind here.
I agree. I should also note, there are even some studies that suggest political violence is trailing off right now, like this month. The Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, ACLED, they've got a graph, here we are, of extremist events. I don't even know what they mean by that. Have a look how it's trailed off. It's even trailed off since 2023 and then trailed off again in the last month. I don't know if they're right. I don't know if they're wrong. I'm just saying there's a lot of subjectivity here. And the more you look, the more subjectivity you see.
I will just say, as someone who has been reading think tank reports for a long time and reading about American political violence, it does seem that most of the reports, most of the sort of research I see finds that a lot of the political violence in the last 20 years has increased when Democrats are in office, not when Republicans are in office.
That's interesting.
And a lot of the most fervid anti-government sort of movements have occurred when there are Democrats in office, less so Republican.
If that's the case, that might be because if we are going through a general period in the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, where there's generally more political violence from the right than the left, then it would make sense that there's more political violence when Democrats are in power than when Republicans are in power, because when people are out of power, they feel powerless and helpless, and they'd be more likely to turn to violence. When people are in charge, there's no reason to be violent.
Yeah, and we shouldn't forget when Bill Clinton was in office, the political violence we saw, or the sort of anti-government violence in particular that we saw, whether it be the Oklahoma City bombing or Waco, Texas. There's a lot of really terrible violence we've seen for the last few decades, and it seems to coincide with Democrats. But again, I have not independently looked at this, tallied up the sort of instance myself. I'm just saying what I've read.
Sure. Okay, what about high-profile examples of left-wing political violence then? Because we've all seen the lists from the right. We've heard them a lot recently. You know, they talk about obviously Charlie Kirk, the attempted Trump assassination, even though he was not necessarily from the left, but they talk about it anyway. Luigi Mangione. He was
pro-Ukraine, which made him obviously from the left.
Sure. Luigi Mangione, we hear Steve Scalise, they go back 10 years.
Baseball.
They talk about attacks on ICE centers. They've got the whole list. This is Greg Gutfeld giving, I think, the worst possible version of this argument, but I'll play it anyway.
What is interesting here is why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know.
What about
There's absolutely no cognitive...
What about Melissa Hortman that we just talked about?
You want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
She doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman before she died. It was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The same. Now you could bring up Josh Shapiro, but then you will not bring up, for example, that was a pro-Palestine person. So don't use your. What about this? The fact of the matter is the both sides argument not only doesn't fly. We don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That shit is dead.
Can I just quickly
flag
some things? Like both his wardrobe as well as the set itself with the like really obvious echo and the fact that it was supposed to be a response to like the Daily Show and have comedy, but it's never been funny. It's remarkable how, despite all of that, he still gets more viewers than the Daily Show.
Yeah. Well, that's the 5 rather than Gutfeld's show, but they both do. That's the highest rating show on Fox, the 5.
I mean, his late night show is the same set, I think. Yeah. Same echo, same. He doesn't.
The set's a little different.
Oh, thank you for clarifying.
That's
that.
okay.
It's been a little while.
That's okay. And let me just note, he does get more ratings, and he gets more ratings than all those shows. But as I keep on pointing out to people, they call him a late night show. He's on at 7:30 p.m. on the West Coast, and he's on at 9:30 p.m. 7 p.m. on the West Coast, and 9 p.m. on Central, and 10 p.m. on the East Coast. None of those are late night, but they're particularly not a late night on the Central or West Coast. So it's bullshit. He's not a late night. You're comparing apples with oranges. But anyway, I always point that out because no one ever does. They always go, he's a late night host. He's a number 1 rated late night host. No, he's not. Okay, so a few things on that tantrum from Greg Gutfeld. They love Greg Gutfeld. He's their favourite. They love him so much. I think he's an overly emotional toddler myself, but they love him. There is plenty of high-profile violence from right-wingers against left-wingers out there, despite what he said. Paul Pelosi, the CDC shooting, January 6, Melissa Hortman. Yes, Melissa Hortman. I know you don't like Melissa Hortman as an example, Greg. She wasn't, you're right, she wasn't personally demonized like Trump was and like Kirk was to a certain extent. But pro-choice politicians have been demonized, and that was why she was killed. The guy didn't know her. That's bullshit. That he knew her. He didn't know her. He was knocking on people's doors. He had a list of pro-choice people, and he was knocking on all their doors one by one. Okay, so let's get our facts right. Notice how he mentions Josh Shapiro as his straw man, but he completely ignores the Paul Pelosi attack, which I think is actually the best one. He thinks Charlie Kirk's been demonized. Try Nancy Pelosi. That is why Paul Pelosi's assailant was there, because he wanted to attack Nancy Pelosi. Why do you think he picked Nancy Pelosi? Do you think maybe he heard of the poison directed at Nancy Pelosi for the last 3 decades? This was an attempted murder. He hit Paul Pelosi in the head with a hammer. He wanted to hit Nancy Pelosi in the head with a hammer. That's why he was there. And when that happened, what happened? The right joked about it. Greg Gutfeld joked about it. Charlie Kirk joked about it. They didn't even take it seriously. Yeah, Trump joked about it. They all joked about it. It was an appalling reaction. And so I actually think that is the best comparison if you want to take the other side. What about? But what about the left not policing their own? That's another one that we hear. They point to Luigi Mangione, which I agree with them on. That I hated that. But the right do plenty of excusing their own violence as well. How about Trump pardoning everyone for January 6th? How about that? The president. How about Trump pardoning the people who tried to hurt the police? How about the Trump administration making sure Ashley Babbitt got full military honors and paid her family off $5 million in a settlement for her supposed wrongful death after she tried to charge a hall with politicians in it? How about that? Trump explicitly excused right-wing violence on Fox News.
What do we do about our country with that? Because we have radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious and they're horrible and they're politically savvy. Although they want men and women sports, they want transgender for everyone, they want open borders.
That's a real Hall of Fame moment, that one. That is the moment when Ainsley Earhart was trying to be even-handed on violence and Trump was too partisan for Fox News.
I mean, you can say the same thing about Charlie Kirk's funeral, where he follows up an amazing act of grace by his widow.
That's
true. To say, I completely disagree with everything she just said, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Before I get into the polls about political violence, have you got any other thoughts about anything we've been talking about here?
Let's do it.
All right, okay. J.D. Vance talked about this during his Charlie Kirk podcast. We'll just listen.
And there are difficult truths we must confront in our country. One truth is that 24% of self-described, quote, very liberals believe it is acceptable to be happy about the death of a political opponent, while only 3% of self-described very conservatives agree. 3% is too many, of course. Another truth is that 26% of young liberals believe political violence is sometimes justified. And only 7% of young conservatives say the same. Again, too high a number. In a country of 330 million people, you can, of course, find one person of a given political persuasion justifying this or that or almost anything. But the data is clear. People on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, one side has a much bigger and more malignant problem, and that is the truth we must be told.
Two observations very quickly off that clip if you're watching. One from Lockie, one from me. The one from me was much less interesting, so I'll do Lockie's first. Lockie's was that the caption was J.D. Vance, longtime friend of Charlie Kirk, not the Vice President of America, which I thought was a very funny observation. My much less interesting observation was how much does he come off like the president in the Hunger Games in that clip? like Donald Sutherland. How much did he come off like that dude, like a young version of him? Now, those stats, Jared, were accurate. He was accurately quoting YouGov polling, because of course I went to check immediately. This was YouGov polling the day after Charlie Kirk was murdered. So straight after Charlie Kirk was murdered, those were the stats. But I need to make a few points about this. Firstly, there is an obvious correlation-causation problem here from the polls he selected. Let's look at this poll from the same press release, separating views on whether political violence can sometimes be justified by age. We see what J.D. Vance pointed out, which was that only 55% of very liberals say political violence can never be justified. Only 68% of liberals say that political violence can never be justified, whereas 83% of conservatives say political violence can never be justified. But if you look at the age results, only 51% of 18 to 29s say political violence can never be justified, whereas 78% of 45 to 64s say that, and 89% of 65 pluses say that. So is it liberals more open to political violence, or is it youngsters, most of whom are also liberals? There's no way we can know. Chicken or egg? We don't know. Secondly, there are other questions in this set of data that J.D. Vance completely ignored that I think might undermine his point a little bit. I'd never suggest he's cherry-picking questions, but if we have a look at this question here, 87% of people said political violence is either a very big problem or somewhat of a problem. Split that by party, 90% of Democrats said that, and 89% of Republicans said that. Seems less of a partisan issue now, doesn't it? If we just pick a different question, JD. And that was all from the same poll. Most importantly, to the extent that liberals do have a different view from conservatives, there's a very obvious explanation. And it's not because liberals are unhinged or extreme or naturally violent. YouGov have been asking this violence question for a while. Every time they ask about how big a problem political violence is after an attack on the member of one party, the supporters of that party are suddenly more anti-political violence. So, more Republicans said political violence was a problem after Charlie Kirk was murdered by 9 points. But more Democrats said political violence was a problem after Melissa Hortman was murdered by 12 points. And more Democrats said political violence was a problem after Josh Shapiro's house was firebombed by 7 points. And more Republicans said political violence was a problem after the attempted assassination of Trump by 10 points. And more Democrats said political violence was a problem after the attack on Paul Pelosi by 22 points. So all this YouGov poll actually proves is that partisans are hypocrites. Well done. We knew that already. But there's an even more fundamental problem to this, and I'm sorry for this to be a theme in this whole section, but the polls are bullshit, just like the stats from before. And what I'm referring to there, the New York Times Upshot had a great piece on this. I'm going to put it in the homework. I'll make it free for you. I'll archive it. In summary, the questions that pollsters generally ask to suss out political violence are just ambiguous questions.
Yep.
What does political violence mean? Everyone has their own definition. Does it mean assassinations? Does it mean vandalism? Does it mean revolts against tyrants like the American Revolution? Does it mean killing baby Hitler? What does it mean? What about the phrase, is it ever justified? What does that mean? Does it mean it can be good? Or does it mean it can be necessary in the case of a tyrant? Also, this is the kind of question that people just cruise past in the questionnaire and don't even consider the implications when they're answering it. So the Upshot noted that there have been a number of polls who tried to solve these issues, asking very specific questions, and by adding attention checks, like asking respondents what they were asked in a prior question, for instance, to just make sure they're paying attention. And when they do all that, the support for political violence plunges.
Yep.
Amongst attentive respondents, Bright Line Watch found 4% who said it is ever justified to commit violent felonies to advance political goals. More in Common found 3 to 4% of both Trump and Biden supporters thought physically attacking the other side was justified if they thought the election was stolen. The Polarization Research Lab found 2% of Americans supported arson against the opposing political party headquarters. About 1% supported murder. As the poll questions get more specific and imagined acts become more violent, support for violence trends towards 0. And when your results are like 1% or 2%, even 4%, how many of those are mistakes? How many of those are trolls? Like, all of a sudden it becomes quite significant how much of this tiny sample is not for real anyway. Bottom line, in terms of genuine support for political violence in America, there isn't much. Like, if you actually look at polls that try to be precise about this shit. So those YouGov polls, I just wouldn't be paying attention to them at all, even though they disproved what J.D. Vance was going for anyway. And there's a really easy demonstration of this. The best poll of all is behaviour. Let's talk behaviour. What's happened in the last 2 weeks? Lefties have desperately tried to prove that the shooter was a righty. Why are they doing that? If they're so pro-political violence, why wouldn't they just embrace it? The reason why they're trying to prove he's a righty is because they're not embracing violence. They think it's bad. In the Mangione aftermath, some on the right genuinely feared that the left would embrace violence going forward. No one's embracing the Kirk shooter. No one. I think that is proof in itself that the left aren't this massive violent mob who are just desperately embracing political violence. Otherwise, they'd be embracing the shooter. What are your thoughts?
I think more than embracing violence, both sides have agreed, maybe not explicitly, that they want to be the victims and they want to be seen to be the victims. And unfortunately, I hate to have the kids these days rant, but it really is like this contemporary societal challenge where one of the most valuable labels that you can be given is victim, because many times the retribution for being that victim is in many cases, not in all, but in many cases is unlimited, right? It's like, you were a victim, so you are entitled to any retribution you'd like. And that's why I think being a victim is, or at least described as a victim, is more valuable than anything else in many instances.
That's a good observation.
I think one more thing just to add to the YouGov poll is I don't know if you caught this. I didn't see everyone you're showing, but the last of the charts they had in that YouGov where they had liberals and conservatives are likelier to say violence from the other side is a bigger problem. And you see 75% of liberals say, yeah, right-wing violence is the bigger problem. 73% of conservatives say, yeah, left-wing violence is the bigger problem. Do you know where the moderates were, or at least self-described? Not even less than half of that. Right. So 18% of moderates said that it was left-wing violence. 30% of moderates said it was right-wing violence. It's like the ones who are most passionate are the ones who are are the most engaged, whereas the rest of the world is less so. I will also say that it always bothers me when people describe themselves as moderate. We like to think that people are just in the middle. You know this very well, that those undecided voters, they're not moderate. They're just weird. Like, they often will have the most inane, weird fixation on one specific issue that you didn't even know was an issue to be fixated on. So I don't know how they self-defined or described as moderate. But anyways, just wanted to add that last tidbit on the polling from YouGov.
On that note about the more partisan people thinking it's a bigger problem from the other side. What makes these YouGov polls that we just described and J.D. Vance's angle hugely significant is a study from 2022, which you may or may not have heard of, by Joseph Mernick, and I'm going to put a link to it in the homework so you can actually read a pretty good summary of this study. And it's worth it. It's interesting. It found that both the left and right think that the other is much more supportive of political violence than it actually is. They both overestimate the other side's support for violence by 2.5 to 5 times, right? And the reason why this is bad is because believing the other side is violent makes the believer much more supportive of violence. No one wants to take a knife to a gunfight. They don't want to be a sucker. So when they think the other side's more violent, they start to become more violent. And when you correct someone's misapprehensions about the other side, they immediately become less supportive of political violence themselves by 40 to 80%, according to this study. Accurate information about the other side is actually the best thing you can do to reduce support for political violence. And the road we're currently on is sure to increase support for political violence on both sides, especially when you look at how the algorithm works on social media. Look at the graph on the right here. This is from John Byrne Murdoch. Extreme points of view dominate on social media in a way they don't in traditional media and on cable TV. So we got a problem. We got a problem that it's encouraging people to think that the other side is more violent, and that's going to make them violent. And then you get a cycle. And J.D. Vance is not helping.
No. And two quick things, if you don't mind. One, when the content that is most compelling is always more extreme. That's the nature of the algorithms. Two, again, talking about vice presidents or even former vice presidents who lack self-awareness. If he wants to run for president again, why would he talk like that? He has to win voters who are left and right. Why not be magnanimous about this? Why not try to be someone who's the better person?
Well, I guess Vance is concerned about the fact that right now he probably wouldn't get the votes from Republicans. He wants to get them first, and then he'll worry about the Democrats.
Win the primary, but why would a Republican run against him in the primary, especially if Donald Trump endorses him? That's just suicidal to run against Donald Trump's chosen successor. But I guess not to start, we're not even a year away from the midterms, but it is worth thinking about what Donald Trump does in terms of appointing his successor and whether he withholds it as much as possible to gain as much leverage over all of the potential candidates as possible.
I think you're right. Let's wait and see what happens with the midterms first. Donald Trump could be seriously on the nose by then. We'll see.
Can we just quickly say on the midterms, they are going to happen? I get this question all the time.
Yeah, lots of people are saying that elections aren't going to happen anymore.
It's like, do you realize how, everyone says that the Civil War was about 2 letters, the S and E for these United States. It became the United States, right? Because there are 50 different states, and they all have their own elections, basically. And yes, there's one president of the United States, but it is very hard to compromise all of those states, or at least even all the swing states.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's having He's having a bugger of a time just trying to get 3 or 4 states to gerrymander, let alone...
And they already were gerrymandered. So it's a question of how long will they stay gerrymandered? And also, is that gerrymandering of those states relevant in a midterm year? Because it's not clear that if you vote for Trump, you're going to, 1, vote for Republicans, 2, vote at all in the midterms. There's a reason that the Dems are doing well in the last 3 midterms, because they continue to be now the party. They become the party that shows up at the midterms. But we've talked about this before.
We have. Anyway, just finish off the Charlie Kirk thing. This polarization thing I was just talking about, that's not going to help. And you put that together with the fact that the Charlie Kirk shooter has become a massive celebrity, which is going to encourage copycats. And those shootings now all get streamed live on social media to millions of people. What are you people doing? It's so obvious where this is going. The next few years are going to be rough, I think, when it comes to political violence. But we'll see.
Not to start what they say is throw a dead cat on the table, but what do you think ends it?
Usually what ends political violence is a combination of serious cracking down from law enforcement with a moderate leader who concedes a little bit to the other side. You combine the two of them and you get progress. That's usually, that's what history says ends it. I'm not sure if that's going to eventuate. I'm sure we'll get the tough from law enforcement bit. whether we get the conciliatory leader from either side, we will see.
And if you look at from my limited knowledge of the history of those sorts of leaders, it's not clear that they are able to maintain their leadership for very long.
No.
A lot of times they make those tough choices, and it becomes politically untenable for them to continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're referring, I'm not sure if you're referring intentionally, but you are describing to a T Gerald Ford, who was exactly the kind of leader I just described and that you just described. That's right. And that was when violence tailed off in the mid-'70s after Nixon.
That's right.
Yep. Anyway, I've mentioned Mangione enough times. He's actually been in the news. So let me just mention briefly Luigi Mangione, who shot United Health CEO Brian Thompson. He's shot him dead at the end of last year. He's just had his 2 highest charges thrown out of court. That is murder in the first degree as an act of terrorism and murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism have been thrown out. So that basically just leaves a second-degree murder charge, a straight second-degree murder charge, and that's it. Which is still worth 25 years to life, I might add, in New York, but it does allow the potential for parole. The other ones did not allow the potential for parole. That led to a lot of celebrations from some people and a bit of abuse for Judge Caro from some on the right, going, oh my God, this gooner in New York, what's he doing? Caro said that New York law doesn't consider something as terrorism simply because it was motivated by ideology. Quote, while the defendant was clearly expressing animus towards UHC and the healthcare industry generally, it does not follow his goal was to intimidate and coerce a civilian population. And indeed, there was no evidence presented of such a goal, Caro wrote. Now, the prosecutors originally said that in his writings, Mangione had written about the deadly greed-fueled health insurance cartel and said killing an industry executive conveys a greedy bastard that had it coming. They said Mangione's intentions were obvious from his acts, but his writings served to make those intentions explicit. The writings, they said, convey one clear message that the murder of Brian Thompson was intended to bring about revolutionary change to the healthcare industry. Look, I think the judge is spot on, though. I think the judge is right. First-degree murder in New York is only available for killings of police and corrections officers in the line of duty, unless you tick off a special box. One of those special boxes is terrorism, hence terrorism charges everywhere. But as the judge indicated, under the New York Penal Code, a person commits a crime of terrorism when, with intent to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, or affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. That's when they commit a serious special offence. So it has to be intended to coerce or intimidate an entire civilian population or a government department. This was clearly not a government department. And I don't think it was an entire civilian population. They were stalking and killing one guy. Maybe they were trying to scare a couple of other health executives, but they weren't going after an entire civilian population. So I agree it's not terrorism. And it's one more example of Alvin Bragg getting ahead of himself over his skis like he does. And, should note, Mangione is also facing state charges in Pennsylvania and federal charges that include 2 counts of stalking, 1 firearms offence, and murder through use of a firearm, which includes the death penalty. So he's going to face the death penalty anyway in the federal court.
Can I just add on polling that was taken pretty soon after his capture?
Yeah.
One poll found that 22% of Democrats found the actions acceptable.
Yep.
12% of Republicans did. That's a 10-point gap.
Okay.
Not a massive one.
Yep.
And then independents were 16%. So there's not a massive, overwhelming, not even a quarter of Democrats were in favor of it. And a 12-point gap is not a huge partisan gap by any means if you look at so many other topics.
Yeah. So more left than right, but really the vast majority of everyone was not supporting shooting people in the street. Isn't that nice?
With that said, if you look at other polling in terms of who their sympathies were, on the whole, most were with Mangione more than Thompson.
Fair enough.
And if you talk to any American who is maybe not very wealthy and has had insurance problems, you can understand. Like, people literally die because insurance companies decide not to cover different procedures, and it's pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, look, I mean, I got sympathy for someone being shot in the head, but having said that, I suspect when he was alive, Brian Thompson was not a very sympathetic figure. Well, while you're pulling out the polls, do you have you've cited a few of these Australian American polls? You just had some data come in, didn't you? You've got anything else?
Yeah, I thought, the PEP community has been so lovely and so kind, and they really far nicer than anyone else who've stopped me in the streets or after public remarks. I'll say that much. I just want to say that I think I gave you what I think is in many ways the headline in terms of the percentage of Australians that want to have been in the alliance altogether. But I will also say that, Australians are pretty down on the United States. Yes. And the percentage of Australians that say the U.S. alliance makes Australia more secure is 42%, which is a 15 percentage point drop from last year. And a 21 percentage point drop from 2022. So,
pretty clear.
Again, so there's this famous story that my boss likes to tell about the Europeans in Europe all complaining about America in the beginning of the Reagan administration, and them saying, Americans are cowboys and unreliable, and they're frustrating. And the UK ambassador says everything you're saying about the Americans is true, but they're the only Americans we have. Again, like, what is the alternative for Australia? Like, if you think about from a security standpoint, which, by the way, the sort of the thing with dealing with America from Australia's perspective is, as much as on the economic front everything is topsy-turvy and the WTO is barely functioning, and putting tariffs on a free trade partner is not exactly how this usually works. On the security side, everything is going ahead. All the military exercises that the U.S. usually does, all the intelligence cooperation that the U.S. has as part of the Five Eyes with Australia, all of that is going ahead. And sort of the structural dynamics of the relationship, sort of the background, is still going ahead. But with that said, I think, the Australians on the whole don't love the Trump administration, don't trust America very much. But one more thing that I found was really interesting is that 2/3 of Australians think that future U.S. presidents will be less aggressive on tariffs than Trump. And so I think maybe Australians view Trump as uniquely aggressive on tariffs, but have been maybe listening to a few folks, including myself, that have said he is not normal on his tariff obsession. This is something unique to him. Time and time again, people will ask, on even media producers will ask me if I know of any Republicans that will go on air and defend the Trump administration's tariffs on Australia, and I'll say absolutely not. I don't know a single one that will go on air and justify complete tariffs on anything from Australia. Now, with that said, sectoral tariffs, I think very well could continue. And the other thing I'll add is that the tariffs on on allies that the Trump administration put on in the first term, they were, including Canada, they were not unwound by the Biden administration.
No.
It is very hard to take on tariffs. It's very easy to put them on, but very hard to take off tariffs once they're in.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd share a few tidbits with the PEP world.
Very nice. Thank you very much. We got one pretty big topic. I think it's going to take us to the end. I'm not going to get immigration done again. By the time I finally get this immigration stuff, that material is going to be 3 months old. But anyway, I want to talk about interest rates and Lisa Cook and this whole caboodle. All right. First of all, the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates by 0.25 percentage point. It was an 11-1 vote. Bit of a strange situation because Trump's chair of the Council of Economic Advisors is temporarily on the board till the beginning of next year. A guy called Stephen Moran. He's filling in for a Fed governor who left early, right?
Why did that Fed governor leave early?
She had some other job. No, I don't think it was anything dodgy. I think she's had another. I mean, she was due to end at the beginning of next year anyway, and she got a very high paying job, so she took it.
I have some news that anyone leaving the Fed can go to a very high-paying job.
That is true. So you're suspicious.
I think there are some questions about why she decided to depart so abruptly.
Yeah, I mean, like she only had a few months left, but interesting. Okay, all right. Well, we might pick that one up again in the future. Regardless, Steve Moran is replacing her on a temporary basis. He is the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, but he hasn't resigned. He just took leave. You're not meant to do that. There's a pretty big conflict of interest of him being employed by Trump at the same time as he's on the Fed making decisions about interest rates. He says if he's appointed permanently to the Fed next year, then he'll step down from Trump's employment. But until then, he'll just keep his job and just be on leave. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. In that 11-1 vote, the one was Stephen Moran because he wanted a 0.5% point cut. Which reflects Trump's position. Who would have thought he'd reflect Trump's position? Trump is saying stuff like here, there's this one here, too late. That's his name for the chair.
Chappelle.
Yeah. Too late, must cut interest rates now and bigger than he had in mind. Housing will soar, President DJT. Trump says they should drop interest rates by 3%, actually. I'm not sure I would trust Trump on economics or anything to do with maths at all. I don't think I've ever heard more confusion, Jared, than when Trump tries to explain how he's going to reduce pharmaceutical drug prices. I want to give you an example of this.
We're going to be reducing drug costs over the next year and a half by not 50 or 60%, by 1,000%.
Freeze! Now, we've talked about this before. You can't cut a price by 1,000%. That would be a very negative price. That would mean you're paying consumers 9 times the price to take the drug from you, which is a poor business practice. Believe it or not, it gets worse. Let's continue.
1,000%, because if you think a $10 pill going, so it'll be raised up from 10 to 20 because it's the world versus us. So the world is a bigger place. So it'll go from 10 to 20. It won't go from 10 to 50 or 60 for them, which is bearable. And it'll go from 10 to 20 for us.
What is he saying? Is he saying the price is going to go from $10 to $20 for America or 10 to 20%? That's not cutting the price by 1,000%, what he's describing when it goes up from 10 to 20. Or is he saying that the wholesale price will be doubled to become the retail price, but right now they're multiplied by 20 times as much? I've got no idea. I've spent some serious time trying to work out what the hell he is saying. He never seems more senile than he does when he's trying to explain his pharmaceutical drug plan, which, by the way, will do nothing. Just as an aside, nothing. But
I will say, I don't know if I've shared this on PEP before, but there's a lot of concern in Australia about the Trump administration targeting PBS.
Yes.
And I said time and time again that it was not unique to Trump for a U.S. president to say Americans paying 2 to 3 times as much for pharmaceuticals as Australians, Koreans, Japanese, Europeans is politically untenable. You can't continue that. I think the Harris administration would have done similarly. Biden did this on insulin and brought it down to $35. it just there was it didn't matter who won the election. There was going to be more pressure on developed world countries about what they're paying for their medicines, one way or another. And it's a question of whether these countries want to. How do they want to band together in response? Do they want to find a solution, or do they just want to push their luck? Because it very well may be that some pharmaceutical companies do not give Australia or some countries access to certain medicines because it will make it too difficult to then sell in the U.S.
Yeah. Or alternatively, does he want all those countries to head over to Alice in Wonderland, which is where he does his maths? That's it. That's the other option. But anyway, back to the Fed, hey? Interest rates are likely to be eased down 1 or 2 more times this year. Trump wants interest rates to be much lower, and he's currently trying to... Sorry?
No, I'm just saying he's so lucky that the economy is getting worse and worse.
I know.
The economic numbers
news.
are really giving him everything he wants in terms of Fed cuts.
Great
Jay Powell
news.
must be ecstatic.
Great news for him. He's currently trying to sack Lisa Cook, one of the Fed governors, so he can basically take over the Fed completely in the next 6 months. Recall that if he replaces Lisa Cook, he will have appointed a majority of the 7 appointed Fed governors by early next year.
Although the governors he first appointed in his first term were nowhere near as MAGA as his current appointee.
That is true, but he's going to be hovering over their heads who is going to be the next chair. And so they're going to be jumping through hoops for him, I suspect, because it's probably going to be between those two. He'll say that to them. Which of you guys is going to be more MAGA for me? Who wants to be the chair? And they'll give him what he wants. And what he wants is the remaining 5 votes on the committee that decides interest rates. Because the way it works is there are 7 appointed Fed governors by presidents, and then there are 5 presidents of the Federal Reserve's 12 regional banks. They rotate 5 from the 12 regional presidents.
Yeah.
The 7 board governors get to confirm who those people are early next year. So during that period, he can blackmail or bribe the 2 slightly less MAGA Fed governors to be on board if he controls a majority, to get them to change the 5 or the regional bank presidents, so they're already MAGA. So then you have a full board to do whatever he likes with, right? That's the plan, I presume. But first he has to get rid of Lisa Cook. He needs to get rid of her to have that control. Otherwise, he won't have enough numbers out of the 7. He'll only have 3, not 4. So that's theoretically the plan. Why is this such a big deal? The reason why is because it means Trump could cut interest rates by a huge amount to stimulate the economy and possibly throw America into an economic spiral because there'll be runaway inflation as a result.
Not be the first time we've seen such a scenario in which the U.S. president putting so much pressure on the Fed that it leads to inflation.
Yeah, well, they did. Famously, Richard Nixon did that, and the entire 70s was obsessed with inflation as a result of that. But there is actually worse than that. That's what I just told you is what everyone's saying.
Yeah.
But there's something they're not saying. If Trump controls the Fed, if he actually controls the Fed, he will have amazing powers that do not get mentioned at all. Let's mention them. The Federal Reserve has the power to lend money to any individual, partnership, or corporation during unusual or exigent circumstances, emergencies, if you will. You can trust Trump to be very sensible about what's an emergency. Remember, during the GFC and the COVID crisis, the Fed issued trillions of dollars worth of loans to first banks, then corporations, then even city governments. And some of those loans don't need to be paid back. There are no legal limits whatsoever on who they can lend to, how much money they can lend, or whether the loans ever need to be paid back. No restrictions. Trump could treat the Federal Reserve like a bottomless slush fund if he wanted to. He could direct money to particular industries or companies, even to his own businesses if he wanted to. He could work against Congress. If Congress wouldn't fund one of his priorities, or they tried to shut the government down, say it's a Democrat Congress and they want to defund ICE, he could just fund it himself by using the Fed to lend free money to contractors to replace the public department. He could do that. But also, he could punish his enemies because the Fed controls access to the financial system. So he could debank any person, any company, or anybody if he likes. He could designate George Soros' Open Society foundations to be a domestic terror funder and then cut off any bank that does business with them. They did exactly this to the federal cannabis industry a few years ago. This is not fiction. This has happened. And it's been extremely destructive for cannabis sellers as a result, even in states where it's legal.
Because the feds never legalized it, but the states did.
That's
and so
right.
the feds took advantage of that.
Yeah, to then debank all cannabis sellers. Companies, if this happened to them, they wouldn't be able to pay their employees. They wouldn't be able to manage their endowment. They wouldn't be able to get a mortgage. They wouldn't be able to pay the bills. They wouldn't be able to receive funding from private sources. They wouldn't be able to do anything financially outside cash. This would make Trump so much more powerful than the Constitution could ever envisage. I don't think anyone's even considered this because no president has been close to this before. Maybe this hasn't even occurred to Trump. Maybe, how about this? Maybe he'd show restraint if he had that power. Maybe. But in my view, the Supreme Court cannot allow Trump to potentially have this kind of power because it would literally create a king. Literally. And it all begins with Trump's attempt to fire Lisa Cook. So let's talk about Lisa Cook. Do you have anything to say before I get into that?
Just say in terms of giving himself money, Forbes has just come out this week saying that Trump's net worth, do you know what it is?
It's like $7.5 billion.
7.3. Do you know what it was in 2024?
What was that?
3.9.
There's a lot of inflation, you know. At least about 4 eggs.
It's a lot of crypto. Thanks, Eric.
Yep. I did say as well that his son's values have gone up from like 100 million to like 750 million kind of vibe as well. So they're doing okay for themselves as well.
Amazing businessman.
Yeah. Such skills. All right. Okay. So Lisa Cook. Recall that the reason Trump wanted Lisa Cook fired or to resign, she's the Fed Reserve director that he wants to get rid of, was according to one of his apparatchiks, the Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, he said she'd committed mortgage fraud. He found 2 documents where Cook had apparently declared 2 different properties her primary home simultaneously and was doing so, he said, to get cheaper rates. Now, at the time, I pointed out the exact word used was actually principal home, not primary home, which means something else.
Yeah.
And by the way, principal home is totally fine. But turns out there's way more than that to defend Lisa Cook. There's a lot to defend Lisa Cook. In her loan estimate for her Atlanta home, it makes extremely clear on one of her documents that Cook had actually declared this to be her vacation home. That document was issued weeks before she completed the purchase, so she was actually straightforward with them. She told her lender on several documents it would not be her primary residence. Also, documentation filed with a court in Georgia's Fulton County clearly says the stipulation exists unless lender otherwise agrees in writing, and the loan estimate shows the lender agreeing in writing. The credit union wrote, property use, vacation home, agreed in writing. There was also another federal form in which she described the Atlanta house as a second home. Also, she never actually asked for a tax exemption for the Georgia home as a primary residence anyway, according to her property records and according to a Fulton County tax official, which means she didn't try to profit from it. So where is the provable intention to commit fraud? It's nowhere. The accusations against her appear to be bullshit. But can Trump sack her anyway? A panel on the DC Appeals Court found no, Trump cannot sack her. At least they found that on a temporary basis before the case is heard properly. It was sadly 2-1, where the 2 were Biden-appointed judges and the 1 was a Trump-appointed judge. I hate when that happens. And the panel held that the president violated Cook's rights by not giving her a chance to defend herself against accusations. The majority said the government does not dispute that it failed to provide Cook even minimal process, that is, notice of the allegation against her and a meaningful opportunity to respond before she was purportedly removed. The Solicitor General, John Sauer, argued for Trump, saying due process It's a flexible concept. Whatever process is due was provided here. Judge Katsas, he's the Trump-appointed judge who is dissent, and by the way, someone who actually worked in the first Trump administration, said that she did not have a right to due process. He said Trump could sack her anytime for any reason. Thanks, mate. So now Trump's appealing to the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens. And remember, a lot is riding on this.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Why don't we have a sting for Bill Pulte? Because we're gonna hear a lot more from him. He is going to be the weapon of choice that Trump is going to sick on everyone. And the fact that there aren't more people wondering about the ramifications of this, like why is Ted Cruz like worried about the FCC but not worried about the reverse happening when the Dems inevitably have the White House again and have their own Bill Pulte looking at the mortgage documents of every single conservative in America that they want to?
That's a great question. Sting operators, do your worst. Bill Pulte, please. Let's talk a bit more about Bill Pulte, because you're right. Let's focus on him. By the way, can I just say, I spend months trying to get immigration in. I spent about 2.5 months trying to get Bill Pulte into Planet America. Not the actual person himself, but to do like a 15...
Bill's just been waiting in the wings. Let me in, Chaz, let me in.
No, to do like a 15-minute story on Bill Pulte, because I could see this coming from a mile away. I saw this coming right at the beginning of the year. This guy was trouble. And I wanted to do a 15-minute story, and it was just never time, because there's always another controversy. And John was like, why are you obsessed with Bill Pulte? This is why I'm obsessed with Bill Pulte, John. Anyway, there are other people that Bill Pulte's trying to investigate at the moment. Adam Schiff, pencil neck, as Trump likes to call him. Bill Pulte accused Adam Schiff of mortgage fraud. That's California Senator Adam Schiff. Trump hates him because he spearheaded the House investigation against him when he was impeached. Bill Pulte seemingly had a document from Adam Schiff which demonstrated that Schiff had declared 2 of his homes as his primary home, one in Maryland and one in California. Ha! The problem is that Schiff also sent a letter to the lender of his Maryland home that said, quote, he was a California resident, paid taxes in California, and maintained a home in California, which is where he declared his homestead, but that his family resided at the Maryland property for most of the year. So it doesn't look like he was dishonest at all. It looks like he was very open. Very hard to prove fraud in that case. Even if you could prove fraud, get this, the statute of limitations for mortgage fraud is 10 years, and his most recent application was 12 years ago. Sorry, Bill. Also, the whole investigation, as you insinuated before, reeks of political interference because Bill Pulte is the dodgiest person on earth. He found this document through leaning on Fannie Mae's Financial Crimes Investigations Unit to ask the Inspector General to go on a fishing expedition for Pulte. So he asked the Inspector General to go on a fishing expedition to the Financial Crimes Investigations Unit. So the Inspector General asked for him. And the proof of the pudding here is that the Inspector General sent the results back to Pulte, not to the Financial Crimes Unit. All right, so everyone knew what was going on here. And then Pulte made a criminal referral for Adam Schiff before he even received the full review. When the Financial Crimes Unit finally provided him with the confidential results of their search, he then immediately leaked them publicly. So he's very dodgy, in other words, Bill Pulte.
He also got into a fight with Scott Bessent.
Yes.
Are you into it?
Yeah, it's all right.
Are you getting...
I was going to mention it in passing, but it's all right. No, let's mention it now.
Second fight for Scott Bessent after first taking on Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Then he decided to take on Bill Pulte.
Who would have thought he's the guy with the temper
now
in the administration?
I know, right? He looks like...
He's so mild.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's always the quiet ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, he famously got into a fist fight with, or had to be pulled back from attacking Bill Pulte, who was supposedly criticizing Bessent to the president.
So yeah, that's what people say, but I don't think that's what it is.
Oh,
do you know what I think it is?
No,
I think it's the fact that Scott Bessent has 2 primary houses. That's what I think. Because he does. Scott said that this was going to be part of my punchline, that 4 of the cabinet are in exactly the situation that all these people are in. And one of them is Scott Bessent, and also the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles.
If you really want to get deep in the weeds of real estate in D.C., you should look at high-end realtors in D.C. and how much they are loving this Trump administration.
I bet they are.
They are enjoying it far more than they did the Biden administration.
Yeah, I bet they are. Now, Letitia James is also in the same boat. There's a whole bunch, like Bill Pulte's has been going through Democrat by Democrat and just, as you say, just combing for who's got any irregularities in their mortgage applications. He's accused Letitia James of mortgage fraud as well. She was the New York Attorney General who sued Trump for fraud in his financial declarations last year. Trump wants revenge. Not a huge surprise that his goon produced seeming evidence that Letitia James had committed mortgage fraud. He accused her of knowingly making false statements to a financial institution to secure favourable terms on a mortgage. But after a 5-month investigation and dozens of interviews, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, refuses to prosecute her. Why? All they had was one document that Bill Pulte dug up, a single document claiming that the home she purchased in 2023 would be her primary residence when it's not. Unfortunately for Pulte, once again, there are other documents contradicting this. In fact, every other document for Letitia James contradicts this. Every other document submitted for her mortgage accurately states she would not reside at the home, including one email James sent to a mortgage broker that read, "This property will not be my primary residence." And on another form, when asked if it is her primary residence, she ticked no. Very hard to prove she knowingly lied, Jared, when she told the truth on every other form. In fact, they can't even prove the flawed document was even considered by loan officers. The lawyers that drafted the document said the error was the result of a template that wasn't corrected. That's what they say. But Pulte and Weaponizing Working Group Director...
There he is.
Eagle Ed Martin Jr. They don't like these excuses. They're not pleased. They want Letitia James charged. And they're campaigning to have the U.S. Attorney replaced with someone who'll do their bidding. And guess what? This week it worked. On Thursday, Trump told Eric Siebert, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, to take a hike. Siebert resigned on Friday, but that wasn't good enough for Trump, Jared. He tweeted out, "Today I withdrew the nomination of Eric Siebert as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia when I was informed that he received the unusually strong support of the 2 absolutely terrible sleazebag Democratic senators from the great state of Virginia. He didn't quit. I fired him. Next time, let him go in as a Democrat, not a Republican. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. President DJT. Drink, drink, drink." That pretext about the 2 Virginia Democratic senators, complete bullshit. They supported him before Trump nominated him. So that's bullshit.
But you know how this works in the Trump administration. It's true that they supported him. And that's someone who was angry who said, look at this guy not doing what we want him to do, and look at how the Dems and these 2 Virginia Dems even supported him.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. He's not exactly a detailed-oriented guy.
No. Look, this is 1,000,000% about not prosecuting Letitia James, even though there's no case against her. Also, James Comey. He's trying to prosecute James Comey as well, but Trump wants James Comey prosecuted for lying under oath. Apparently, there's just no evidence. That's the problem. So, just to be clear, this is really, really, really bad, Jared. Even Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi support Siebert and say those charges aren't going to stick. If Pam Bondi is lawyering above your level, then you're in trouble. Remember the old principle of the law from William Blackstone. It is better than 10 guilty persons escape than that one innocent suffer. In this case, Trump is trying to knowingly make innocents suffer, even when he knows for a fact they are innocent. And he doesn't care that James would certainly beat the charge because he just wants to make her suffer as vengeance. He wants to drag her through an indictment and trial for no reason at all, just revenge. That is as impeachable as you can get. Never mind Trump directly ordering prosecutions in his DOJ that he knows are fraudulent. New contender for the worst thing Trump has ever done. But if that's not bad enough, the person Trump has nominated to replace Siebert is a woman called Lindsay Halligan. Do you know who Lindsay Halligan is?
I don't know her. Tell me.
It gets worse and worse. This is how Trump put it. Pam Bondi needs a tough prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, like my recommendation, Lindsay Halligan, to get things moving. What we don't need is a Democrat-endorsed Republican. I'll be nominating Lindsay Halligan to be the United States Attorney in this very important part of our great country. She'll be fair, smart, and will provide desperately needed justice for all. Of course, when he says justice for all, he means political prosecutions for my enemies. But this is who Lindsay Halligan is. You might recall a few weeks back, I played a grab from someone explaining why the Smithsonian needed to be more positive about American history and not focus on negativities like slavery. That was Lindsay Halligan. Before 2022, Lindsay Halligan's entire resume consisted of being third runner-up in the Miss Colorado USA competition in 2010 and chasing up insurance claims for a law firm. That was her entire resume before 2022, when Trump parachuted her onto his defense team of hot women. She failed over and over and over again. Everything she touched turned to shit because she had no idea what she was doing. She was barely a lawyer. She is currently Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy and the Special Assistant to the President and Senior Associate Staff Secretary, both of which seem like exactly the kind of job she is well qualified for. And if she is made the U.S. Attorney for East Virginia, she'll be responsible for prosecuting some of the most important national security cases in the country. She'll be in charge of prosecuting many of the spying cases in the country, even though she has literally never prosecuted a case of any kind in her life. But she'll also follow Trump's orders and prosecute Letitia James, who will then beat the charge after a painful trial. What could go wrong? Apparently, the U.S. Attorney in Maryland, Kelly Hayes, is also on notice because she reasonably doesn't think she can make the case against Adam Schiff either. And Trump is, I'm sure, leafing through the portfolios of beauty queens with law degrees ready to go there as well. Maybe you think I'm being unfair, Jared. Maybe Trump is firing Siebert because he's a Rono and it has nothing to do with Trump corruptly forcing through bogus prosecutions. Well, if that's the case, this next bit is hard to explain. It just keeps on going on and on. Trump clearly meant to send Pam Bondi a DM on Twitter, but accidentally he sent it publicly. Let me read it out. Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time, all talk, no action, nothing's been done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty, Shift, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied in the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him and there's a great case. And many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer. She likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now, President DJT. So, what we see here, Jared, is 1, ironclad proof that Trump is ordering who his attorney general should prosecute, which until now was considered incredibly corrupt. 2, we are seeing that he is judging who should be prosecuted, not from the evidence against them, but from whether he gets angry tweets about them. And 3, his primary motivation is indeed vengeance for them prosecuting him. He's just blatantly admitted it. That's quite an evidence-heavy tweet there for one that wasn't meant to be sent. Now, I should say Trump denies all of this. This is his answer to the question, are you criticizing Pam Bondi for not going after your political adversaries?
I just want people to act. They have to act. And we want to act fast. They were ruthless and vicious. I was impeached twice. I was indicted 5 times. It turned out to be a fake deal. And we have to act fast. One way or the other. One way or the other. They're guilty. They're not guilty. We have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they are guilty or if they should be judged, they should be judged. And we have to do it now.
You can believe him if you like. And as the final punchline of this story for you, Jared, I should go through those 4 members of Trump's cabinet I just described who have at least as much evidence against them as these people, if not more. Those people are, in case you're wondering, Labor Secretary Lori Chavez Darima, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and also Trump's Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. And here's the best part. All of them appear to have not really done anything wrong. They just have the same dodgy evidence that the other people did. And they just live in Washington and somewhere else. And this gets confusing sometimes. You know who has done something wrong, though? Bill Pulte's parents. Yeah. They're not about to get prosecuted, I think, under the Trump administration. But Democrats, statute of limitations, so it won't be up in 3 years' time. That's an interesting one. Good work, Bill. Just for the record, none of those people I just described are being charged at this point in time. Although Lindsay Halligan might. I hear she's a really good lawyer and she really likes Pam Bondi. What are your thoughts, Jared?
Can I just say the most shocking thing about this to me, maybe it gives you an indication of just my cold dead heart, but the fact that Trump engages in DMs at all. He famously does not use email.
Yeah.
And yet somehow when I was looking into this, I found that Jack Smith during the Biden administration, they obtained 32 DM messages from Trump's Twitter accounts. Did you know this?
I did know this, yeah.
I missed the story entirely.
Yeah.
I had no idea that Trump communicates in any way electronically with others.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he was sending a DM was the most surprising aspect of this whole thing for me. Because he famously does not use email. And I think he also has been sued enough and indicted enough that he doesn't like electronic records of these things. He likes phone calls. He likes personal, in-person engagements. So I know that's a sad state of affairs when that is the most shocking aspect of this for me. But I think that is, like, the fact that he does keep some electronic records is surprising to me.
Fair enough. Well, for me, I know I took a bit of time on that. I just raced on through. But for me, the level of corruption of intentionally trying to prosecute people for revenge when you know you don't have a charge against them. And in fact, firing a responsible US attorney in a critical district to replace them with a complete loser who can't do their job and is going to hurt America just so he can get revenge when they're not even going to stick the charges. That is just off the charts corrupt in a way that, I mean, look, I was going to say, I mean, it's so hard to do a Grace Hits on Trump, but this is right up the top. And what's it for? What's this all about? It's all about getting control of the Reserve Bank with Lisa Cook so he can genuinely become the most powerful person in history. It is so scary. Like, the actions he's taking to get there are automatically disqualifying of holding that position. It's So I wanted to take the time because this is not getting covered. Really, most of the stuff I just told you is just not getting covered. Yeah, because it's too complicated. So
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
I want to know, I don't know when we'll find out, I want to know what convinced Pam Bondi to take the job. Because you knew any attorney general is going to come under a lot of pressure from Donald Trump. Yeah. That is every single attorney general Trump ever had. in this first term came under a lot of pressure. And so surely she's smart enough to realize that she was going to get hit like this no matter what. So I want to know, what did Trump do to scare her into taking a job? Because this was an inevitable outcome.
What else is she going to do? She's retired.
Enjoy Florida?
Yeah.
Continue to be a lobbyist for Qatar?
Yeah. In hindsight, she may agree with you. Okay, Jay, we're definitely over 3 hours. I will leave it to Lockie to make his best fist of this, and thank you very much, Supervisor, for your benevolence.
Can we just automatically just speed it up to double speed, and that way, no, not allowed? Shucks.
But we've messed with speeds before. It's you don't want to know what it sounds like. It's not a good result.
To be honest, I only listen to all my podcasts in double speed. So hearing just the stings on single speed was really weird. I'm used to hearing it in twice speed. By the way, every time I hear the last sound of that sting, it kills me every time.
Same here. You and me both. This is why we're twinsies.
The way that the eagle's just dying, that just kills me every time.
Jared, thank you so much for stopping in here for this PEEP.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And the only thing I regret is that we can't do it for 3 more hours.
I've got enough immigration to fill 3 more hours, but let's not. I'll see you next time, Jared. I'll see all you guys in 2 days' time for PEP 132, Lockie? 132? Yeah, that's the one with Dr. Dave returning then. Till then, stay peppy.